Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the March 20th Finance and Audit Committee meeting. I'd like to first recognize we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Our clerk this morning will be Ms. Karen Robertson. Today's Finance and Audit Committee meeting will be held in accordance with the Community Charter and Council Procedure Bylaw 2018, number 7272. The question period sign-up sheet is by the table to the double doors to my left for agenda items only, and if during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question related to an agenda item, please write down your name and the agenda item on the sheet. I'm not seeing anyone who's joining us electronically this morning. Is that correct? No. First item on the agenda is the introduction of late items. Ms. Robertson, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. We just have one this morning, which is an addition to the report section. It'll be item 6J, and it's entitled Housing Accelerator Fund Update.
Thank you very much. Motion for adoption of the agenda is amended. Moved Councillor Perino, seconded Councillor Hemmons. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion for adoption of the minutes is circulated. Moved Councillor Hemmons, seconded Councillor Perino. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. And the first presentation, even though it's got the least amount of words, is the 2025-2028 project plan. Ms. Mercer.
Good morning, everyone. So we're here today to just present an overview of the projects that are in years 2025 through 2028 of the project plan and give you kind of a bit of an overview of our process and how we get there. And then departments will go through some highlights of their larger projects and their plans. So I'm going to pass it over to Ms. Fulla to go over the first few slides.
Ms. Fulla, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. So next month, we'll be bringing the final 2024-2028 financial plan back to Council for review and adoption, but work is already underway on the next financial plan. This morning is an opportunity for Council to provide feedback to help guide the direction of the project plan. Staff will be providing an overview of how the city's project plan is developed, as well as highlight some of the projects in years 2 through 5 of the current financial plan that will help form the 2025 to 2029 financial plan we'll be bringing to Council this fall. We will also talk about how those projects align with the integrated action plan. Staff can answer questions on projects as the project slides are presented. As well, at the end of the presentation, there will be an opportunity for Council to provide feedback and input to staff. So long-term planning. Last spring, staff brought forward an update to our asset management plan as well as our 20-year investment plan. These are long-range planning documents that we target to update every 5 years. They are meant to be attention-directing and support proactive decision-making. The 20-year investment plan provides support for recommendations that were presented to Council on strategies to address our infrastructure funding gap. On an annual basis, staff update 10-year departmental project plans. The first 5 years of those plans are included in the 5-year financial plan that is presented to Council. Well, maybe we'll have the next slide. There we go. So a number of different components are considered when we develop the project plan. There are strategic projects. These are projects that support the integrated action plan and Council's strategic framework. Examples include property acquisition and the commercial street implementation. We also have opportunities that arise in conjunction with planned projects that support Council's objectives. This might include greening a project, for example, reducing GHG emissions as part of a facility project, the purchase of an electric fleet unit instead of diesel or gas, or even anti-idling technology in the case of our fire apparatus. There also might be opportunities to add amenities to a project that support the IAP. Other examples of opportunities include grant opportunities, such as the Harewood Artificial Turf Fields. There was an opportunity for the city to apply for a grant, which helped us move the project forward in the plan. Opportunities also arise as a result of other projects being undertaken in the community by other organizations. Renewal projects are typically the majority of the projects in the plan, and they help maintain current levels of service. Our asset management plans identify upcoming projects, and as projects move up in the plan, condition assessments help determine the appropriate year work should be undertaken in. Meetings also occur with operations staff to gather input on repairs and maintenance. Our new CAM software, Cartograph, will help provide better information on repair and maintenance of specific assets, which will help better refine identifying the optimal time to replace an asset. We also receive public feedback and input on our infrastructure, which we incorporate into the plan, and of course, always providing overall direction as how the projects align with your IAP. And finally, we have upgrade projects. Generally, these are DCC.
Sorry, Ms. Fuller, I understand Councillor Armstrong's trying to get online. Maybe we can just suspend proceedings for a minute or two.
Sorry to interrupt. We're good, I think.
Could be worse. I could be in charge of IT.
Am I talking too fast? No. Oh, is he carrying?
Oh, speak the devil, there's my string. Nice to see you. Don't take it personally, but we'd like to see Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Your Worship. Is any assistance required, though?
I wouldn't even know what question to ask. I'll leave it to someone.
No comment, Your Worship, on that.
They told me about this. On something.
I suggest we'll give it a couple more minutes and then we'll just let Ms. Fuller proceed. I'm going to suggest you carry on and we'll hopefully get Councillor Armstrong on board shortly.
Okay.
Ms. Fuller, please.
Thank you. And finally, we have upgrade projects. Generally, these are DCC projects required to support growth. Staff undertake modeling to help determine the impact of development on existing infrastructure to determine when upgrades are necessary. Infrastructure may also need to be upside for other reasons, such as to address climate change. During the project planning process, hundreds of projects are identified for each year in the plan, but there is limited resources available to execute all the projects. In addition to funding constraints, there are non-financial constraints, such as staff capacity, available contractors, and supply chain challenges. This does result in missed opportunities and the balancing of risk and condition issues. In summary, staff develop project plans that are aligned with the priorities identified by Council and to maintain current levels of service. The project plans are developed by departments and reviewed based on staff capacity, outstanding risks and opportunities, and are then submitted to Finance. Finance compiles the citywide plan and attempts to fund the plan. Historically, funding requests have exceeded available funding. Multiple meetings are held with senior management and between project leads from different areas to prioritize projects based on risk, opportunities, maintaining levels of service, and alignment with council priorities until a balanced plan is achieved. This is the plan that is brought forward to each fall to council for your consideration.
If I may, Councillor Armstrong, you can hear us okay? We're all good? Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Fuller, please.
I also wanted to touch briefly on a number of larger capital projects that are not currently in the project plan. These projects are at varying stages of development. The recent update to the 20-year investment plan did recommend borrowing as the funding strategy for a number of these projects, of course subject to council and electoral approval. The 2024-2028 final financial plan does include $4 million towards land for the South End Community Centre, which is funded from reserves. Looking at the financial overview of years 2 through 5 of the current financial plan. Right now, in years 2 through 5, we have $223.6 million in projects. Now, you will notice that the violet piece, which is facility projects, is larger in 2025, and that is because we do have two significant facility projects. We have the Bevan Park Complex roof, as well as mechanical upgrades at NAC. And Mr. Bryson does have some slides later in the presentation, and we'll be speaking further on those projects. The majority of funding from projects comes from reserves. This includes asset renewal reserves, such as our asset management reserves, our equipment depreciation reserve, and our IT reserve. As well, we have other reserves, such as DCCs, growing communities, and Council's strategic infrastructure reserve, just to name a few. A portion of general taxation is allocated to projects each year. However, you also need to keep in mind that the annual contributions to our asset management reserves are funded from property taxes in the case of the general fund and from an allocation of user fees from sewer and water for the general and sewer water asset management fee funds. Looking at general revenue funding from projects, in 2023, the base funding for projects was set at $8 million. The 20-year investment plan and recommendations were based on an annual 5% increase to that amount. This increase helps to address both inflation and the growth in city infrastructure. In addition to base funding, Council has approved additional funding. So that'll be the darker little squares there at the top of the graph. So in 2023 and 2024, you approved funding as part of the business case for the implementation of the fire master plan. So we're doing renovations to the stations in both 2023 and 2024 to accommodate the 20 firefighters that started last August and the 20 that'll be coming on board January 1st, 2025. And as well, in December, you approved funding for the Bevan Park Pickleball Court project, and that was added as additional funding in 2024. So now we're going to turn it over to the departments to highlight some of the projects for you. And first up, we have sustainability, and Ms. Ting is here to speak to those slides.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Let me see if this works. Okay, so I just want to highlight a number of projects in 2024. The first two projects that we're wrapping up and the other two projects that will be starting this year. The first one is the Nanaimo Region Deep Energy Retrofit Feasibility Study. And if you might recall that it's a FCM funded study, and we're about to bring a report to the GPC committee. And this is the first time we're getting a lot of great insights as to how to reduce energy and emissions in the low-rise residential buildings, mostly homes. We got a much better idea of how many homes are still on fossil fuels and how much they contributed to the overall emissions, and what are the potential retrofit packages and how much they will cost, and what are the financing options that the city might want to consider.
I wonder if you could just give us an idea how the study is going to be conducted. I mean, what does it look like on the ground? How are we going to come up with a number? Are we knocking at everybody's door? Are we using scientific data? What's the approach?
Sorry, the approach to...
The feasibility study, I mean, is it to look at what we can do, or is it also going to assess what's happening now? I just want to understand what that means, and for the public's benefit. It's not just mine.
Yeah, so this feasibility study has two components. The first is really just to get some data. For the first time, in a consolidated data from BC Assessment, from MLS listing, from NRCan, to look at, just get a better understanding of what we're dealing with. So now we have that insight. And the second part is like, these are all pretty major retrofits that will take tens of thousands of dollars to complete. And so what are the financing options that, like Saanich or Central Saanich, and, the federal government have different financing programs. But what would that look like, and where's the gap is really the question that this feasibility is trying to answer. So I hope that helps. The second project is consumption-based emissions inventory. So we, in BC, for the most part, we're developing this inventory that is based on the energies that is consumed and emissions that occurred within a geographic boundary. The consumption-based emissions inventory look at the emissions that is associated with all the goods and services that was used. So that would include emissions that come from, products that are made outside of the city of Nanaimo. That's probably a more accurate and fulsome pictures in terms of the impacts that was induced by our residents and by the cities, and development and consumer behaviors. So this inventory will help us basically create a more localized carbon calculator for our residents, and also an ecological footprint calculator to help understand, individual consumer choices, the actual impact on the global emissions. So that is meant to use as a kind of educational tool to help change behaviors. The third one in the Nanaimo e-mobility strategy. So that is, the goal is to increase e-bike and zero-emission vehicle adoption, but also supporting our modal shift to active transportation. So this one is going to start in 2024, and we anticipate it will be wrapped up in about a year. The last one is a building retrofit roadmap, and this is really helping us to take the full picture of all the existing buildings we have in the community. What are the emission reduction pathways, to get us to zero emissions, and what are the key actions needed, in the next 5 to 10 years, in order to meet our targets. So what's really great is this is connected to the first project. We have got a really good study for the low-rise residential buildings, and then so the building retrofit roadmap will be also picking up the other type of buildings, so commercials, institutions, multi-unit residentials. Emerging issues and opportunities.
Councillor Gesselbrock has a question.
Oh.
Great, thank you. Thanks. Just a question on the project highlights. I think these are all key areas that we need to be addressing to move forward sort of with our plans. And just in terms of, I guess, like feasibility study, inventory, strategy, roadmap, they're kind of like all almost precursor activities to a program implementation. So I guess my question is, are these leading up to the development of specific programs that we'd be rolling out? And are there opportunities to leapfrog maybe some of the feasibility study and and things that may not lead to immediate sort of like on the ground implementable action that could be possible? I'm just curious on that.
Yeah, to Councillor Gazabrek and through the chair. Yes, these are studies basically set up to take on, pretty significant programs and projects that we're planning in the future, but we already have a lot of programs and projects also, doing the implementation, like the step code that we already done, and we have programs to support retrofits, and it's on the next slide. So these are really identifying, what are the tools and the gaps we need to fill, and without a good understanding of the actual barriers or the target audience, we weren't able to really use our resource efficiently to be effective. So these studies are really meant to lead to more complex, innovative and significant projects. So that requires a bit more understanding. These are all going to be fairly impactful, like in terms of financing. We know that there are still tens of thousands of homes that still need retrofits. Incentives itself is not going to be enough. Those are the easier ones to do. So now we're getting into the territory of like what other gaps that we can fill.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for that. Obviously we want to make sure that, when we do roll out a program that it's targeted to, highest best use of what resources we have. And I think, as council and, myself, wherever there's an opportunity to leapfrog, maybe something that, might return stuff that we kind of already had a pretty good idea that's what it would come back as, to accelerate wherever we can the program activation on that. So, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I will touch on a few emergent issues and opportunities. So the first one is related to the Clean BC Better Homes municipal top-up rebate. So kind of related to your last question. I'm getting, sorry. Switch the chair. So this program, Council has been supporting for the last 4 years. Since April 2020, when the Clean BC Better Homes rebates were launched by the province, and we have been providing top-up rebates with amazing results. So when I was looking back at the number of rebates issued, in 2020, we issued 32 rebates. In 2022, there are 249. 2022, 331. Last year, it was a record 607 rebates. That helped hundreds of homeowners to complete their retrofits, and 93% of those retrofits are converting from oil and gas. So it was a really amazing result. That was about probably 10% of what we needed every year to reach our target. So it is a successful program, but this is why we're also doing the feasibility study on financing other options, because obviously more needs to be done. So at the end of February, staff was notified by the province that they plan to extend the program from basically end of March this year to end of March next year, which is good news. But our remaining budget for the top-up will likely run out in April. But from what I have seen, it looks like all the previous investment the council made has made a significant difference in building up the momentum. Even then, when we thought the top-up rebates ran out last October, we didn't observe any slowdown in terms of the progress. So for now, we are not seeing any slowdown if we don't top up the rebates. So we're currently not recommending adding more funds to the program, but we'll, basically support the province to continue to support the program.
Councillor Himmons has a question.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. What's the dollar figure on this? Like if we were to provide top-ups till the end of the provincial program, and I'm kind of floored that the province would extend a program but not provide extended funds to the program. So you can continue to run it, but on your own dime. But I'm curious, what is that cost to us if we were to do it?
Yeah, I'm happy to provide that information, Councillor Hammonds. So when we first started providing top-up rebates in April, Council allocated $100,000. And then in 2022, we added another $100,000. In 2023, we provided $60,000 top-up. And in 2024, we have $36,000. Altogether is $296,000, so just under $300,000 over 4 years.
And if I may, what's the average price that the homeowner claims?
For the top-up, we only offer $350 top-up, and then there is also a $50 rebate that the contractor can claim. And if they're, a qualified contractor and helps refer to the client. And the province gives up to $6,000, I believe, around $6,000 for a heat pump conversion. And if it is income qualified, then residents could potentially claim up to $29,000, I believe, for not just heat pump, but also insulations, windows, and doors. So it's significantly more than our top-up rebates.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Perino has a question.
Your Worship, and a question through you. I just wanted to clarify a question that Councillor Hammonds just brought up, and the provincial program is being extended until 2025. Is their funding is also extended then until 2025? Is that correct? Because it's the top up. Okay, good. Thank you so much. Thank you.
That's correct. So the second point is around the establishing a home retrofit financing program. So we're going to bring this report and the feasibility study to council shortly. And it does seem like it is feasible. But establishing that program will likely require some pretty heavy lifting from staff, and also we probably will look for grant funding support, likely from the FCM. The third point is around e-bike program. So to develop a program that will encourage the adoption of e-bikes is in our IAP, in the priority list. And currently we plan to develop that program after e-mobility strategy completion, because part of the e-mobility strategy is to help establish a baseline and understanding the gap between business as usual and a projection when we meet our emissions targets, and figuring out who might be left behind if there's no policy interventions, and what are the barriers to e-mobility adoption. So cost could be a barrier, but there might be other barriers that we want to consider when we're developing the program. While we're doing this, we also learned that while we know that the province did have an electric bike rebate program in 2023, so last year, that was really successful. It was, I believe, kind of oversubscribed on the first day, within hours. And so the province might release another rebate program for e-bikes in 2024. They haven't confirmed, and they did say that if they do go ahead and there is an opportunity for the municipalities to provide top-up to increase the number of e-bikes, benefiting our residents. So that is an option, but right now we don't have any further confirmation.
Councillors Kesselbrock and Eastmere have questions. Councillor Kesselbrock.
Thanks. Yeah, just with the home retrofit financing, that would be sort of the province passed some legislation to allow it, and then this is similar to like a PACE program?
Through the chair, so that's a great question. So we are actually going to bring a full report to council or to GBC very soon. But basically what the consultant concluded is that there are two potential models that are feasible, that are available to us. One is a PACE-like program, like what Saanich and Central Saanich has done. The province hasn't established the PACE enabling legislation. So we're still going to be relying on our what is the tool available to us to make a program like that. The other option will be through a partnership with a financial institution, which hasn't been done in BC, but it was deemed potentially feasible. So those are the two potential pathways. It just requires a bit more investigation and kind of exploration of what that might look like.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Eastmere.
Thank you. My question is about the e-mobility strategy completion, because you were saying it will take about a year to do that e-mobility strategy, but then it's saying that there's opportunity with the e-bike program if the rebate's renewed for 2024. So it seems like we're going to miss that deadline to take advantage of those potential funds anyway, because we won't be in the implementation stage.
Not necessarily. So through the chairs, I think that if we do get confirmation that the province is going to start an e-bike rebate program again this year, we will probably bring back a report recommending some options to take advantage of that opportunity. We could potentially tap into our Climate Action Reserve Fund if that's how Council wants to support and provide top-up. That's an option that can be done in parallel to the e-mobility strategy development. I guess what I'm trying to communicate is that if we were to do our own program to support e-bike adoption, it will probably be considering other barriers through the learning that we'll get from the e-mobility strategy.
And how much is the e-mobility strategy costing, and as far as staff time as well? How much of an investment is this strategy?
So the e-mobility strategy is going to be mostly done through a consultant. And right now we have basically myself and Mr. Rose. So we are both involved in the development e-mobility strategy. I think we probably will be looking at a meeting, like a regular meeting with the consultant once every 2 weeks throughout the project process.
And okay, so it's going to be done by a consultant then. I think we put $50,000 towards it. Does anyone, can we confirm how much? Okay. Yeah, I think it's an interesting one because, as you say, cost is obviously one of the biggest barriers to people adopting it, but then it's also the other things that we're in control of, which are active transportation networks and actually having the routes for people to travel. And I think that's kind of a no-brainer, and that we can continue working on that without necessarily needing a strategy. And I feel like we're also sort of helping private industry, because cost is a huge thing, and people who can afford an electric vehicle are buying them. But it's you're serving sort of the richest portion of the population in that sense. But as far as the e-bike program, I'd definitely be interested to see how the city could help support that rebate idea. There was something in our calendar last week for a e-bike share launch. Do you have any insight on that you can share at this point?
I will do my best through the chairs. So I believe that the e-bike share is going to get pilot in Nanaimo, and that was being managed by our active transportation team. I believe that they're working with a partner to bring that to Nanaimo for a period of time to try it out. And it's not really in conflict with what we're doing, in the e-mobility strategy or supporting e-bike program. One thing that I'm cautious of just running an e-bike incentive program is very expensive. So the provincial rebate program, they offer up to, I think, $1,400 and for income qualified participants. And the Saanich also had their own e-bike incentive program. Usually it will require some funding support. So if the province is willing to restart the program, that was certainly a significant help. I did get some preliminary numbers from the province about the participation last year. And even without any advertising or our effort in kind of pushing out the provincial program, I think we got over 100 participants, and most of them are income qualified participants, which meant that it does, there is a demand, and it does seem to help with people with lower and middle income levels to help alleviate transportation costs.
Interesting. Yeah, thank you. So I think we're seeing that there's already like high demand and interest in adopting it if people can overcome the initial cost. And I think the other piece is that we are in control of is the end of trip facilities, which people are constantly talking about because they would love to ride their e-bikes, but they need a place to safely park them. So I feel like we have a lot of the information already to be able to be implementing these things without needing to wait a year for a strategy. That's my take on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thanks. I do want to be mindful of time. I know we've got to get a lot on it. Just with the e-mobility strategy, I know there is a council motion that's on the table about developing an e-bike rebate program. And I think the bit of the concern is like, say if we've got this e-bike rental thing going on, that's going to allow access to a lot of people to be able to use e-bikes on our infrastructure. Is our motion to have this incentive program that we did a year ago and in part of the IAP, is that sort of like the main component of the e-mobility strategy, or is the e-mobility strategy much larger? Because if it is, I think what we're feeling is like, let's maybe not pursue that. We've got this e-bike rental in place, and maybe we should just really focus on infrastructure, so that people can use them safely and in the trip facility, and save you the time focusing on this, that it is complex to do it equitably. So I guess what I'm wondering is assurance that e-mobility strategy is much larger, and that maybe we can just take out this incentive program and go with the rental program that we have, and then double down on infrastructure.
Yeah, through the chair, I think that it could be an outcome. So even though the e-mobility strategy will take maybe a year to complete, but we did divide it into two phases. So the first phase, we expect that will conclude probably this summer, and bring the report to council to share what we learned through that baseline study. So we're trying to get a better understanding of how people travel and what are the barriers or the benefits they see through e-mobility adoption in Nanaimo. There's a lot of studies on e-mobility now that will help inform just the kind of questions we need to ask. And it will then clarify the role of the city in how to close that gap between business as usual and the path where we can actually meet our transportation and emissions reduction goals. So that, I think you could get a baseline information and engagement results in the summer, and that could be a decision point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Ms. Fuller, sorry.
Through the chair to Councillor Eastmere, just in follow-up to your question, the 2024 budget for the e-mobility strategy is $120,000 funded from the Climate Action Reserve.
Thank you very much.
And so the next section of slides is the IT project highlights, and Mr. Ng is here today via Zoom to present those slides.
Mr. Ng, good morning. Welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good morning. When I was with everyone, with each of you last time back in November, talking about the digital foundation, I did qualify that as a bit of geek speak, and what that does mean is a replacement of software systems, key software systems, such as our enterprise resource planning system that handles all financial transactions and a lot of our HR transactions, our development permitting system, which is been in place now for some time. And these systems are anywhere from 15 to 20 to 25 years. And as we know in technology, time goes a little bit faster. So that kind of span is, well, generational. And I made the reference that these systems that we're currently using can be compared to a Model T. They do get the job done, but they consume a ton of gas and they have a lot of maintenance. And in our instance, that gas is Excel spreadsheets. as a lot of our systems definitely rely upon numerous Excel spreadsheets, as well as a lot of manual interventions, maintenance, to get things done, things such as our payroll, such as our budgeting, such as making sure a permit works through the system. The tools that we're upgrading to, well, in comparison to a Model T, these are EVs. They could be Hyundais or Kias or Teslas, but they're quite a bit more significant. They're quite a bit more advanced. If anything, they allow for automation, they allow for self-service, but most importantly, they create a much greater user experience, whether it's for staff or for the public, in terms of completing tasks or just doing business. So, for example, our corporate asset management system, CAMS, what is being done with the system is that the teams that are field workers who previously relied upon paper and binders have all the information about a particular asset. Well, that information has now been transferred to a tablet where the staff individual, they can be on site, they can be at the specific asset, and on the tablet has all the information about its maintenance, what's coming up, and if any proactive work is to be done. We'll also be upgrading our website, and we're moving to the most latest version of it. So that's going to allow the teams, the communication team and others, to make changes to the overall navigation, to make changes to the search function, to add additional features and functionality. So it creates a better user experience for our citizens. As we're well underway in terms of the development permitting system, we're moving forward with completing the first phase, which is having all commercial permits available on the system. And what's critical about this one is that this system, as I alluded to before, this system will allow for transparency and visibility for either side of the aisle, whether it's the requester or staff, to know exactly where the permit is or the status of the permit, what are the outstanding tasks, so that we can reduce overall cycle time in terms of issuing these permits to the developers. And as I made mention earlier, our ERP this system is the lifeblood. It's mission critical for the organization because it handles all financial transactions and a significant portion of our HR processes. But what it'll be doing is it'll allow for automation, it'll allow for self-service options, it'll be increasing or reducing cycle times for activities such as payroll, such as budgeting, so that we're increasing the overall user experience and we're via new modern technologies. Now, underpinning and this foundational piece is, well, we need to protect it. And we need to make sure that there's a network in place so that the activity on it, well, it sees no congestion. So from a cybersecurity point of view is that we're going to be continuing on the work that was done in 2023, which included engaging of some security consultants to provide assessments in terms of how we're doing. How is our current security? How's our network defenses? So we do have a list of items that we're implementing in this year and 25 and 26 to make sure we show up. And we always continue to defend, whether it's technology and processes and people, so that we stay vigilant and ensure that we can secure the organization's data. As for the network redesign, well, this is a multi-year project where we're making changes in terms of the connectivity amongst the facility as well as between facilities, because the network is the highway. If I make mention of the applications being the vehicles, well, the network is the highway that the vehicles move along. And we're making sure that there's no congestion on this highway through the next couple of years. Going forward projects, 25 to 28, cybersecurity. Again, you don't need to do a large Google search to get references in terms of recent attacks and that are very successful. The city of Hamilton, for example, is undergoing one right now. So in addition to the activities that the consultant had identified, we're going to continue on doing cybersecurity training, and we do have implementations for new technology and processes that will occur next year and going forward. Network redesign, as I mentioned, this is a multi-year project which will providing new network capabilities within each of the sites and between the sites, and our cloud migration strategy, which I made mention to back in November. And this is really the migration of our Microsoft services, which are physically or are located in servers and our locations. And we'll be moving this data and these systems into Microsoft 365 cloud environment. And the reasons for this are numerous, one of which becomes it's more secure, greater accessibility, but most importantly is that there's tools within the Microsoft 365 ecosystem that we're just not using right now. And these tools are for collaboration and productivity. And I think by implementing those and most importantly, training staff on how to use the tools is that we'll be able to increase, well, again, user experience. We'll be able to increase the overall efficiency that people are using these tools with in order to get their day-to-day jobs done. If we can go to the next slide, please. And then wrapping up or completing the major activities that we have from 25 and 28, our ERP replacement is we're looking to launch this in the summer of next year. And as I made mention earlier, this is a significant change from our current process, our current system. And we're definitely looking forward to seeing what benefits will be received in terms of reducing overall cycle times for key activities such as payroll and budgeting. And then our GIS. GIS is already a digital foundation. It is as good as any of our peers, and it definitely underpins a lot of the activities. It provides information to a lot of activities that Ms. Pan had spoken about, what Mr. Rose will be talking about later, just in terms of providing the information to get these tasks completed. So some of our initiatives include updating our open data portal, which will allow for just a more data sets, more holistic data sets for public consumption that will be available through nanaimo.ca, and then ongoing upgrades, including ortho photos, as well as ortho photos and aerial photos, so that the information that we're presenting via the Nanaimo map and the maps that we're using internally are as accurate and as current as possible. So the emerging issues and opportunities, well, this is what we need to continue, and this is what we need to consider too. So our asset management system cartograph, we've made incredible strides in that with the adoption from the public works team, and we want to make sure that we can roll this out to other departments so that they can take advantage of the migration from paper and binders to tablets that give information about an asset at the source, so that the field teams can have all the information necessary to do the either proactive or reactive maintenance on the tools. Continuing on with our development permitting solutions, so we're migrating our residential permits in addition to the commercial permits. Our SharePoint migration, this is in part with Microsoft 365 solution I was talking about. And this is a bit of a this will be a bit of a job just in terms of moving all those files from our on-premise location into the Microsoft 365 and making sure that we do the necessary training and awareness for staff to take advantage of the new tools. And then I really want to draw attention to our cybersecurity as well as to our broadband strategy. Cybersecurity is, I can't speak enough about it just in terms of the overall importance. And we need to always be ensuring that our technology and processes are up to the task, but most importantly, our human capabilities, our human firewall is up for the task as well. And this is why we'll be rolling out training and creating even more awareness in terms of what individuals need to do to be vigilant, to defend the city's data as well as systems, and then our broadband strategy. And this is in line with the fiber strategy that was presented to council a few months ago. And this will be a combination. This will be a combination of some in-ground fiber build to some of our primary sites, a limited number, but then also working with our telco providers to ensure that they can provide the necessary internet and site-to-site capacity. So most importantly, we're future-proofing the network, because we do know that as the years are coming, there's going to be increased demand on digital activity. So we just need to make sure that our network is able to handle the current load and what we're anticipating to be the future load. So it never knows any congestion. I think with that is the last of my slides, and thanks for everyone's time and any questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sims, you wanted to say something?
Thanks, Your Worship. Just ready to roll into the next exciting portion of the
All right. Any questions? No. Question for Mr. Ng, please. Councillor Prino.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question for Mr. Ng. I just wondered, regarding the cybersecurity and some of the issues that some other cities and medical facilities and that kind of thing have we had a serious breach that you've seen? And I say this with a certain horror, but yet, have we seen anything that has been substantial for our systems?
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Perino, thank you for the question. At this time, we have not seen a significant breach. We have not witnessed a significant or successful attack. Our defenses right now are good in terms of being able to detect attacks, and we do get them all the time. But they detect the attacks, they isolate the attacks, and then they remove the attack. So at this time, we're doing all right. However, but more needs to come because we know at any given time a successful attack can hit us and the impact will be severe.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. We've heard so many stories around the country, and so it's important that we remain vigilant. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Ng. Mr. Sims, Engineering and Public Works, please.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just briefly introducing Mr. Stewart, who will run you through the presentation. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about one of the slides that Ms. Fulla had up, which was her, we call it her bucket slide, all of the drips and the leaks and so on and so forth. But there's really a tension between not only the operational issues, things are falling apart or breaking down or deteriorating. There's that tension there. And then there's the capacity, not only financial and the crazy costs that we've seen, but the capacity within the organization to deliver projects to the same degree that we're seeing the deterioration, to keep up with that, as a matter of fact, sort of whether it's project managers or through our purchasing department or even externally in the contracting world, their ability to deliver. So we've got this sort of tension going on, and one of your reports is indicating, we've had a sort of a brief, sort of more recent history of increased carry forwards every year. So we're not keeping up with the projects that we're planning. So what we're working on for the next plan is to create a bit of a gap or some capacity within the plan. If you remember Ms. Fulla's graph with showing the overall projects plans, if we can stretch that out a little bit more, that will allow an opportunity to catch up to the work that we're doing, but also to be prepared for opportunities like, dare I mention, knock, or perhaps the Hammond Bay, when the regional district is going to be replacing their massive trunk sewer along Hammond Bay, that we're going to be expected to come to the table as well to upgrade some infrastructure in parallel, including the surface. So currently we don't have that funded, we don't have that capacity to take that on, so creating some space in the plan will help that. With that, I'll pass it over to Mr. Stewart, and we're happy to answer questions, of course.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hemmons has a question before we get to Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for that explanation. I'm hearing you say that we will create space in the future in our plan. Why wouldn't we create it now?
Well, we're creating it for, let's say, next year or the year after. We'll move. If it's an Excel spreadsheet, we'll insert a column and not fill anything in it for year 2026, if that makes sense. So that we'll allow the projects that are currently funded, currently planned to build out.
I got it. So
and then we take a break, but that'll allow some catch up. That's an oversimplification, which I like to do because I think simply, but that's kind of the basic concept.
So we're not going to press pause on anything that's currently in the hopper. We're just going to be very mindful of putting anything else in the hopper. But I'm hearing you say that won't happen until 2026. Is that accurate?
Something along that line.
Okay.
Yeah. We're looking for what are the right opportunities, or what is the right approach to making sure we're not over planning our capacity, if that makes sense. Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Stewart, good morning. Welcome.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Sims. So I'm pretty sure that the council has seen most of these projects and most of these slides before, so I'm going to give them a bit of a cursory overview, but please stop me if you have questions or want more information on any of the projects. A real quick highlight on what we're doing this year. As Mr. Sims said, it's a busy year. We've got a lot of big projects, and several of those projects are projects that have been ongoing for quite some time, like the Midtown projects, both the water supply and gateway projects are continuing on. We're just getting going on construction on the next phase of Midtown Gateway, and that will be the final phase, and we're expecting an 18-month or so construction season to that, so we'll be working on it until the fall of next year. And then also our first phase of Commercial Street is starting up in September, so that's going to be quite an exciting project for downtown. And then the rest of these projects are a little bit of what Ms. Fulla was talking about earlier about your asset management projects, your DCC projects. They're not overly visible or overly exciting, but they're the core projects that we need to keep our infrastructure in good shape. So quite a few of those going on right now. Our transportation projects, so there's quite a bit of funding over the next several years in transportation, but the slide's just intended to direct your attention to that the majority of that funding is going to keeping our existing infrastructure in good shape, keeping our major roads paved, keeping our signals operational, that type of thing, street lights, existing sidewalks, all that kind of stuff. There is a bit of funding for active transportation and new roads, but the majority is for the existing infrastructure and keeping it in good shape.
And just if you can just pop back, I was going to say, and just for the benefit of the public, although I suspect the next slide will show us, when we talk about active transportation, what does that mean to the public?
Yeah, absolutely. Active transportation is anything that gets you somewhere that's not in a car. So it's sidewalks, cycling facilities, transit as well. Yeah, that type of thing. Whether it's a path through a park or
you know where I'm going with this, not just bike lanes,
yes,
for those who are so attuned to that concern around us building bike lanes in the community. Thank you.
And pedestrian unallocated. So every year we have a really good conversation about which projects should go into this and how much we should fund it. The base budget in the plan moving forward is $300,000 per year. And of course, every year we come to council and have that conversation about which projects and how much the funding should be. So I expect us to be in front of council again in the not too distant future about this year's group of projects and funding levels.
Councillor Greeno.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I could ask a question of Mr. Stewart through you. I'm just wondering, when you do, we get so many requests for additional sidewalks, right? Particularly where, they're older roads and people walk on the road. But I'm just wondering, do you have, just for the public's understanding, do you have like a scale of, which ones are needed so that all the time, so we don't just follow a request that comes in, we have an actual pattern of, which ones we're going to do on a yearly basis? Is that how it works?
Absolutely, through the chair to Councillor Perino. A lot of our projects come from different sources. So some are projects where we're doing a comprehensive street upgrade, so we will do sidewalks at the same time as we're doing the sewers and the
exactly.
But it's also where it makes sense. So sometimes it'll be a local road and it won't make sense to put a sidewalk there. Other times it'll be a major arterial, and if there's not a sidewalk there, it really does make sense to put something back there. And then there definitely is a comprehensive matrix that our transportation department has developed around collecting those inputs from the public, adding them to things like, is it close to a school? Is it a route somewhere that's highly used and that type of thing? So there's all sorts of work that goes behind the scenes before it becomes a project in front of council. Absolutely, and it's part of it is the public input, but also part of it is other things like the strategic plan and the other aspects as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I was just hoping that we have this continual trying to fill in the puzzle pieces of all the areas that are still out there that are missed.
Your Worship, I'd be happy to jump into, Mr. Rose has talked about the pedestrian prioritization in the past, and then I think it was only last month or earlier this month that we talked about the various active transportation networks, the sidewalks especially, and where the gaps are on those primary and secondary networks. And so that's, as Mr. Stewart said, that's where we look to keep our focus rather than off in some
thank you.
Residential area.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, I just want the public to know there is a plan. Thank you so much, Mr. Stewart.
And Councillor Hemmons has a question.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm looking for a general comment. Over the last number of years, we've increased this budget significantly, adding projects. How are we keeping up with those projects, given we can fund it as much as we want, but we have staff constraints and we have contractor restraints and that bucket imagery? Are we falling behind in what we would prefer to see our work plan do because we don't have the capacity to match the funding that council has provided, or are we keeping up?
Absolutely. Through the chair, that's a fantastic question, Councillor Hemmons. So I'd say from the moment it is a direction from council to implementation, we're probably at least a year before we see construction happening. So, and as Mr. Sims says, we are a little bit behind on these ones. So we just finished construction of the projects that council approved in 2022. We finished those in 2023. We're in design on the 2023 projects. You'll see some of those be constructed this year, probably some into next year. So we've got a cycle about 8 to 16 months between when we hit go on the projects and when it happens. And part of that is capacity. Part of it is, you want to make sure that you do your due diligence. You want to make sure you do it at the right time of year. So, a couple of these are in front of schools. So, we're trying to hit spring break. We're doing a project right in front of Georgia School right now because it's spring break. And so we're trying not to impact the school as much. We're going to do the departure-based sidewalk this summer when school's out. Just trying to be strategic about the impact of the public as well as the timing of the design and construction.
Thank you. That 18 to 24 months is a good, that's a good indicator. A further question on that, are we realizing any economies of scale when we're bunching projects? So our last pedestrian unallocated targeted crosswalks, and we kind of decided to leave sidewalks aside because we were going to target those specific crosswalks we knew were troublesome. When we do that, are we realizing any efficiencies because of that bunching?
Again, through the chair to Councillor Hemmons, I'd say the smaller the project is, the more expensive it is to just build that little piece. Like if we build a larger project like Albert Street project, for instance, that just was constructed, per meter of sidewalk, that's substantially cheaper than just one curb extension or a crosswalk. So while the projects are good, they're individually they're fairly expensive for the infrastructure.
Okay, thank you.
And Councillor Gesselbrook.
I'll ask it later on. Sorry, thanks.
Okay. Please.
As well, commercial streets. So we, as mentioned, first phase is underway or going to be underway for this year. The remaining phases are what's shown up on the slide there. I'll just add we had a fantastic conversation with some members of the downtown community around Diana Krall Plaza yesterday, and I'm really looking forward to bringing the results of that conversation into council and what that project will look like in the next couple of years. What we should be in front of council in the not too distant future on that one.
Excuse me, Your Worship, if I can just jump in. If you have an opportunity after lunch downstairs in the Duke Point room, there's the ongoing workshop, and so you might see some sort of messy, scribbly drawings in progress, but it gets you an idea of what the team's been working on.
Thank you very much.
The town site area project is it's an older neighborhood built in the 50s and 60s, and a lot of the infrastructure is original. So this is a classic asset management project where we're rebuilding the underground infrastructure street by street over a number of years. And Hammond Bay is one of the growth supporting projects. We have a sewer main that needs to be larger to support all the growth and housing that's being put in the north end. So this is, it says fall 2024, likely it'll be early 2025 and into next year to get started on that one. And we also see some intersection upgrades at the two ends of the project to renew those signals while we're there. 3rd Street and Fitzwilliam is quite one of the larger projects on the horizon for next year, and it's a complete rebuild of the street between Pine Street and Howard Avenue with sidewalks, cycling facilities, new road, and the underground infrastructure replaced. From Pine Street down to Selby Street, where it's budgeted right now to do the water main and the road, and there's an opportunity to do some cycling lanes there, but it's not currently funded in the plan. And as you can see, it's about a $1.6 million project to add that to the project, and that's something we'll be discussing this year as we develop the plan and the funding available for it. Wexford Creek is a culvert upgrade, asset management, flood protection, that type of thing in the Sailgate Mall area. We did the first culvert a few years ago, and then the apartment building was built at 1300 Junction, and now the downstream infrastructure is on the horizon. Millstone Trunk Sewer, another project to support growth in our city. This one was actually supposed to be constructed this year, but it's in the floodplain of the Millstone River, so we want to be very careful about when we're out there constructing it. And because it's in the floodplain, we need a number of permits. We need a Ministry of Environment permit, a Department of Fisheries of Ocean permit, and an Agricultural Land Commission permit. And these permits are taking quite a bit longer to get than we thought. So we just decided to hold off for one more year, make sure we have everything in line before we go there, so we're not under construction too late into the season and have to deal with rain and mud and all that kind of stuff. So Norwell Drive. This project's just right at the beginning right now. We know we have infrastructure in the area that is at end of life, the roads, the underground infrastructure as well. And on top of that is the Country Club Transit Exchange. And so the first stage of the project is kind of picking up where the Regional District of Nanaimo's transit redevelopment strategy left off and trying to understand what that transit exchange should look like, where should it be, that type of thing, and then kind of moving forward with there. Working really closely with our colleagues at the Regional District on this one, and of course, being a large project, it'll be in front of council a number of times before it goes to construction. East Wellington at Madsen, traffic signal in the area currently planned for 2026, and also continuing with some of our active transportation infrastructure in the area. Towers Reservoir, so this is a reservoir upgrade, again, to support growth in our city and to ensure we have fire flow in that neighborhood. South Fork Dam, I believe Mr. Squire was in front of council not too long ago talking all things dams and reservoirs and that type of thing, so I believe you're up to speed with what's going on this project. And then Bowen Road repaving, so another one of these transportation projects where we're trying to keep our existing infrastructure in good shape. So we've got a repaving project for 2026. Again, there's the opportunity to add a cycling facility between what will be our Midtown Gateway project and what was done on Bowen Road at Labio, but it's not currently funded. So we're gonna, again, having conversations about that, about where that can be put in. And then the next few slides are your less exciting projects. I'm not going to, but they're no less important, right? They keep our infrastructure in good shape and running, and so we can supply our citizens. So just it's to highlight that even though there's the big ones that everybody sees, there's a lot that goes on in the background that's not as visible that staff and the contracting community are working on. So a number of in 2025 and 2026. And 2027. So we've got a big long list of infrastructure upgrades that will happen over the next few years. Transportation projects, again, very similar list, but the majority of these are repaving or intersection upgrades. The one notable one is 5th Street, and that is intended to go in conjunction with the T-Tuxdom development on 5th Street there. So we'll be connecting with that, trying to make sure that we do our infrastructure at the same time as the development is going on. So once it's done, there'll be a completed street, not just one half of the street. And then, of course, we have our city fleet to keep our staff and firefighters properly equipped with the equipment that they need. And so over the next several years, there's a number of replacements that'll happen. Programs and studies, there's a number of programs and studies that are ongoing to inform, most of these inform the capital plan, trying to understand the condition of our assets to ensure that we are spending the money in the right place, understanding the growth in our community to ensure that we're keeping up to date with that growth. And then of course there's a couple of transportation ongoing budgets to help with active route to schools and traffic calming and that type of thing.
Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. The active school travel for 30,000, we understand that the city often sits down with the school district and our CMP to figure out kind of the crunch points. What does this $30,000 go towards? Is it supporting those meetings? Is it supporting actions that emerge from those meetings?
I'm going to actually ask Mr. Rose to pop up and talk to that one.
Mr. Rose.
Good morning, all. So that $30,000 line item is really to help us work with the schools and their surrounding neighborhoods to identify and prioritize the concerns they have. And so that, like the pedestrian matrix, feeds into the overall planning component and also enables us to identify some softer skill programs, walking school bus type of things that could then help address some of the lower hanging fruit type problems. So.
Could you, I'm sorry I didn't see this, can you give me an example of one of those lower hanging fruit projects that have come from this?
We've done the Drive to 5 programs at a number of schools. So quite often what catalyzes the discussion around a school is the concentration of pickup and drop off traffic, which creates conflict and friction, and it just creates a lot of problems for folks. And so what we do, understanding that not everybody can walk or bike to school, is encourage families to congregate sort of in the periphery of the school. So say within Drive to 5 is theoretically a 5-minute walk. Maybe it's 10 minutes, but the idea being you meet at a park or a playground or somewhere generally close to the school, and then families can walk the last 5 or 10 minutes, not having this crush of cars coming to the school. So that'd be one example. There's other ones where we've just provided some better wayfinding and information sharing so that families are fully aware of where the different paths or cut-throughs are in their neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Stewart?
All right, thank you, Mr. Rose. And then another group of studies, again, to inform the future of our infrastructure. And the final slide here, emerging issues, and I believe Mr. Sims spoke to this at the beginning, but the RDN is planning to replace their rather large force main along Hammond Bay Road, and will be a very large and disruptive construction project when that does happen. And in that same alignment, there'll be a lot of our infrastructure that both under the ground and above the ground that we'll have to have the conversation about what gets replaced, what standard it gets replaced to, and that type of thing. There's definitely opportunity for our utilities to be replaced. It's fairly straightforward. The transportation side of it is a lot more complex because, one, it's fairly expensive, and two, in some areas there's just very limited ability to do anything more than what's there just because of the slopes and the challenges there. So you would, if you were to add that, you're talking large retaining walls and significant costs. So there'll be some opportunities, but also some places where it would be much more difficult to do work along there. So we're working again with our RDN colleagues quite closely with this one, and again, we're just getting going on it, and we'll be in front of council probably a number of times, and in front of the RDN board a number of times with this project.
Thank you very much. Any further questions on this section? Much appreciated, Mr. Stewart. Mr. Sims, the next.
So
project
Mr.
highlights.
Bryson's here now to speak to the facility projects as well as the PRC project slides.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Welcome you two.
Good morning, Your Worship and members of council. So I'll speak to the project highlights for facility projects. Ms. McCaskill couldn't be here this morning, so I'll take on those. So is this the clicker? Green, apologies. So the first slide, complete the gap analysis for GHG reductions in the corporate facility portfolio. This includes to complete that gap assessment, 10 of the highest gas consuming facilities that really account for about 65% of the related emissions in the city. So exploring where we can make efficiencies and what it can offer us. Also, green building policy update and develop a facility asset management strategy, or continue to develop a facility asset management strategy. This will help prioritize the different projects instead of we have all these projects that need GHG reduction initiatives and just putting them in priorities so we can attack them in a more logical sense. Some of the project highlights: renovations of stations 2, 3, and 4, modernization of freight elevators at VICC, and installation of CCTV cameras in parkades. Some of these are already being worked on, and others will be taking place in 2024. Some of the projects for 2025 to 2028 as far as parkades: a safety and security modernization of elevator at the Harbourfront Parkade, replace EV chargers in Harbourfront Parkade, or Harbourfront and Port of Nanaimo Center Parkades with dual head chargers. Right now they're single head chargers, so replacing those with dual head chargers just increase the capacity as we have more electric vehicles needing that service. Asset renewal of select HVAC systems at the Port of Nanaimo Theatre Parkade, Center Parkade, and renewal of fire suppression systems at Port of Nanaimo Center Parkade.
Are these just wearing out, or are they not subject to vandalism or anything of that nature?
I'm sorry, sir?
They're just wearing out as opposed to being the subject of vandalism or fire or something of that nature. Is that fair?
It's just asset renewal, so at the end of life cycle and having to upgrade them. Police operations building, and Mr. Grote can speak to some of this as well. This is, again, is asset management life cycle equipment replacements. Replace the high density shelving that's there right now. HVAC replacement as needed. Mechanical work that's ongoing. Main roof replacement, a design at this point. And storage building roof replacement. So those are all projects that have to take place in 2025 to 2028. Corporate facilities. Facility renewal and improvements at City Hall and Service Resource Center at the SARC. Repainting the interior and exterior of City Hall and the interior of SARC. We started doing some of that. We're doing some work in the basement of City Hall. We painted out human resources in some of the offices, so it's part of the renewal of the whole facility. Asset renewal of fire alarm components, access controls, alert systems, CCTV systems, and including the expansion of the CCTV. These cameras are quite aged and do need to be upgraded. I mean, they have a lifespan of between 5 and 7 years, so they do need to be upgraded to a newer system so we have better CCTV coverage. Renewal of building controls to improve efficiency. That's the how we control our HVAC, how we control the heating systems in the facilities, making sure that everything's running well. So it's all of our facilities use pretty old programming, so we're looking at replacing a lot of that through a lot of our facilities. So it's a lot more efficient and a lot easier to operate, and just overall better experience for the patrons that use facilities. Nanaimo Fire Rescue Facilities. Facility renewals and improvements to stations 2, 3, 4, 7, and fire training centers. These include asset renewal of domestic hot water supply in Station 2, exterior repainting and resealing of Stations 3 and 4, building addition at Station 7, renew of the exhaust system and truck bay at Station 7, and concrete renewal at Fire Training Center. Again, these are all driven by asset renewals, part of life cycle. Vancouver Island Conference Center. Again, it's the same sort of scenario. It's renewing some of the assets that are just coming to part of the end of life. So in the Vancouver Island Conference Center, fire alarm system components, flooring replacement, audio-visual equipment upgrades, needs exterior painting, and some of the commercial kitchen equipment will need to be replaced as well.
Councillor Eastman has a question.
Thank you. Just through you, going back to the slide about the facilities at the City Hall,
Yes.
regarding expansion of the CCTV. We get a lot of questions about privacy and et cetera. So can you just elaborate on what that means?
As far as the privacy information, PIAs?
Yeah, and when you say expansion of CCTV, like, what are we talking about?
Expansion would be modernizing the cameras that are already there. So all the facility upgrades for CCTV are done with the PIA first. So working with Megan and Bill Sims and some of the folks that we've created a CCTV sort of work group to look at all the different facilities, what are needed in all our facilities, and then go through that process of creating the PIA so it's done properly, and then
What is PIA?
PIA is privacy information assessment. Sorry.
Okay.
So it's quite it's an extensive process, but it's make sure that we're doing everything properly and with best intention, so that the privacy of our citizens and our staff and everyone else that uses these facilities is taken into account, and that the need is actually there. So it's a good process. Streamlined it quite a bit, because it was at one time a long process, but it's still a very efficient process. But it's made a lot easier for us to operate with, and identify some of these facilities that have high risk and high need. And the ones that already have CCTV cameras, as I said, most of it's just replacing cameras that are already there. Still go through the same process with the PIA, but those ones are just a replacement with new cameras. And then we're looking at facilities that would be enhanced by having cameras installed into them, like the parkades, for instance, where we have a large amount of activity, that car theft or car break-ins and that type of thing that we're trying to protect, and property damage.
And around City Hall, do we have CCTV inside and outside the building?
We have it outside the facility right now, but as I said, they're quite old, the cameras, and they do need to be upgraded. They still operate, but they're not as efficient as some of the ones that are out there now are very, very good, and it would go a long ways to protecting the assets.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Appreciate it.
Okay.
And Councillor Hemmons has a question. And Ms. Robertson, you wanted to say something?
I was just going to clarify, excuse me, that PIA stands for Privacy Impact Assessment, and it's something that's required by the provincial government. It's a fairly rigorous process that one has to go through anytime you're collecting personal information. That impact assessment must be done and must be proven as to its need.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hemmons?
Thank you, Your Worship. On the slide previous to this, Station 7, forgive me, but I'm not aware of a fire hall number 7. Am I losing my mind here?
Yeah.
We have a building addition at Station 7, Nanaimo Fire Rescue Facilities. At Truck Bay, Station 7. Where's Station 7?
Station 7 location.
Protection Island, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
We learn something every day, Councillor. But good catch, or call.
Okay, so I'm on to projects for Parks, Recreation, and Culture.
I'm going to suggest that I'm sure this is going to take a little while, and the scheduled break is 10:30, unless someone objects strenuously before we get started. Maybe we'll take the morning break now, if that's all right.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. I keep speaking to
Culture, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So to continue on parks projects, some of the ones that are finalizing this year, the Harewood Centennial Park Artificial Turf Field, or dual field, beautiful complex. It's going to be well used and well appreciated by the community. It's very close to being completed, and it's turned out very well. I think it's going to have a huge impact to that part of the city. The Marie Davidson BMX Bike Park upgrade, that's out for tender right now, so that project's well underway. The Westwood Lake Beach enhancements, we just closed yesterday on an RFP for the construction manager for that project, so that's going to be on its way as well. That's a very good project. Looking forward to seeing that one take place. And Westwood Ridge improvements, not exactly sure what all has taken place in there. I reached out to the Parks Department. They couldn't, they're definitely close to finalizing, but I don't have much more information on that one, unfortunately.
Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship. And a question through you. I just wondered when the West Lake Lake Beach enhancements will begin, when that project will begin.
It'll be phased.
phase.
Oh, sorry. It'll be phased in, so it will start on it this year. So it'll start with the beach improvements as far
Yes.
as clean.
No, I'm sorry. I meant when. I'm just thinking in the summer, it's a zoo. So I'm just wondering when it was planned.
It'll be in the fall,
Okay.
in the off season.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So next projects that we're working on, the Cottle Lake Raised Boardwalk. This is almost completed. It's just under a kilometer of this raised boardwalk through that area. And then continuing on from there, the Parks Department will build a trail, a natural trail, to continue on from that. So it's looking very nice and very well received, and it's turned out very well. So it was a big project. The Bevan Park pickleball courts, we are looking to go out to tender for that, and working with our finance department on getting that all squared away. So that'll be taking place as well.
And I'm sorry, just to confirm, the pickleball courts when?
Yes.
The design will be in 2024, and the construction will be 2025, 2020, I believe 2025.
You realize the fate of Western civilization depends on having access to pickleball courts now.
Exactly.
These will be actually in a good location. They'll be away from everyone. They'll be in a good location. Some of the facilities projects, explore and implement systems to reduce the need for harsh chemicals in aquatic facilities. We've started that pilot project, had great results, and the intention is to stop using UV, which causes air quality issues, stop using as much chlorine, stop using as much acid as possible. There's as few chemicals in our pools as possible, but we're still maintaining very clean, clear, safe water for our patrons. So we're seeing some great results with that, and we're going to continue on that road. Replacing older inefficient HVAC systems at NAC with new hybrid heat pump systems. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a while. And installation of CCTV cameras at NAC. Again, this is a replacement of cameras that already exist, that have been there for several years. This is replacing with newer, higher grade cameras that can do a better job for us and extend the lifespan of the system we have. Finishing off the lobby partition at NAC, we've got it almost completed. We're just waiting for the programming component of it. This was done to control traffic going to our change rooms through the lobby, and gives our guest services folks a little more control over how people use the facility. So right now it's in place. As I said, we're working with IT to finish off the programming so that the gate kicker, which is the part that opens up, will actually start working properly, and it's one person every 3 seconds. So it's very quick, very efficient system, but everyone's very happy with it. All the patrons seem to be happy with it. We haven't had any concerns whatsoever, so that was a really good one to have in place. Completed just within the last little while, completed the sound system upgrade to Oliver Ward's Community Center. It's a state-of-the-art sound system so that we can have multiple functions going on in different parts of the facility, and they don't interfere with each other, and an overriding PA system for safety that can blank out everything else, and so we can send messages to the people that are in the facility. Several accessibility projects in cooperation with the Rick Hansen Foundation. We just received the remainder of the grant that they had offered to us. We just got that this week. So it was another $52,000 in projects that we'll be putting into place. And they've been great to work with. In total, we have $82,000 in grants that they've provided us to make our facilities more accessible and for our patrons. So it's been a really good project to be part of.
I just have a quick question.
Councillor Eastman.
Thank you. Through you, I just wanted to ask about the accessibility projects through the Rick Hansen Foundation. At the Accessibility Committee, we discussed the fact that we have the 2 staff members who are trained to do the assessments, and there's a version 4.0 that's come out. Have staff taken the new training up to that new level?
Through the chair. Yes, we're aware of that. There are 2 staff members that have taken training through Rick Hansen Foundation. They were trained under the old system, but both those, myself being one of them, are writing our final exam for CSA at the end of May, and that will include portions of the new manual. We also will be putting 3 more of our staff through the training as well, because then we'll have more auditors looking at our facilities. The intention is that the people who take the auditor's course and become certified auditors will be able to go through our facilities and assess them for any needs that are required, and then make recommendations from there. So we'll have 2 that will be able to do it right away, and we'll have 3 more staff that will take that training and go through that whole process. So we'll have 5 in total to look at all our facilities and parks. It includes trails, and I was just talking with Jamie Rose recently about accessibility for our sidewalks and roundabouts and that type of thing.
Fantastic, thank you.
Sorry. So replace lighting at the Oliver Woods Community Center. That'll be happening this June, pardon me. So this is everywhere excluding the gym, which was already replaced with LED lights. This is part of the greenhouse gas emissions initiative. As well, it just creates a way better atmosphere. If you haven't been up to Oliver Woods lately, it does start looking like a dungeon after a while. The old lights start fading and they lose some of their foot candles. And so replacing with LED lights will just brighten up that facility greatly, but also reduce the amount of greenhouse gas that it emits. So it's a really good project. It'll make a big difference to that facility. Replacing lighting through the Cliff McNabb Arena, that is also slated for this summer. And again, that's an older type lighting system we have in that rink that uses a lot of energy and is not the greatest for lighting and for efficiency. So the new lighting throughout will all be LED. It'll create a much better playing space for the patrons, safer because it'll have better foot candles, and it'll also reduce a lot of our power needs. Investigate opportunities for substantial energy savings at Bevan Complex. This is a large one. There's everything from heat pumps to electrification of some of our boiler systems to going into the pool, doing the same thing at the Bevan pool as we're doing with NAC as far as reducing the amount of chemicals we put into the pool. Just different efficiencies that we're finding throughout. I mean, these are older facilities that have lots of opportunity to make some big changes, and just with small initiatives make a big change down the road. So that's what we'll be looking at. Oh, sure. So I'll pass some of this off to Ms. Osborne. Just the first one here, replacing the roof at the Port Theatre, is one of the projects that's ongoing for 2024, and that's in progress. It will be in progress for 2024. And I'll pass a couple of these next points off to Ms. Osborne.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning. Project highlights for our culture department. We would be remiss if we didn't mention the banners going up that were designed by local artist Amy Pye. Those beautiful banners were approved through council, and what we are doing this year to complement the 150 acknowledgement is adding additional banners at the Breckin Hill Boat Ramp, the Harewood Centennial Park, Nanaimo Curling Rink, and throughout the Bevan Park. So we'll see additional banners throughout our community. Also approved through council was the temporary public art program. We will see the installation of the Elliott Whitehill public art piece at the Old City Quarter, and we will also see Robert Turriff's Colliery Dam piece going up hopefully before the end of the summer. Come forward. Catching up in 2024, we are going to be catching up some of our previous temporary public art program pieces. In 2023, the Moon Snail House was approved, and due to limited resources, material supplies, and staffing, there's been a slight delay in the actual implementation of it. I can speak to the fact that the piece has been fabricated, and we're hoping to have it in place before summer, and that would be the Moon Snail House piece that will be installed out at Piper Lagoon. Chimes for the South End by Jesse Gray is also in fabrication, and we hope to see that installed before the end of this year as well. Both of these temporary public art, or all of these temporary public art pieces, align with our integrated action plan priorities for 2024. And back to Mr. Bryson.
Okay, so next slide's on stadium district improvements. Many improvements going on in the stadium, ongoing. I've been here 3 years, just over 3 years, and it's been amazing what the transformation of that whole park is. It looks great. It really does. I was just down there a couple of days ago. So there's a lot of things that still have to happen to it. Working a lot on the bleachers systems, making sure that they're safe and proper amount of bleachers for the patrons. Working on wash cars. So we have the right amount of wash cars for patrons, also accessible wash cars for patrons that need those. So those are ongoing for this year. We're looking at some of the other things that are coming down as far as capping mine shafts, because that is definitely over a bunch of mines, so that has to be taken into account. Reworking the bullpens, they're pretty old. They haven't changed much, but redoing the bullpens, and then looking at an artificial turf infield. Having come from a facility that had an artificial turf infield, it's a game changer as far as what it brings to our stadium. It'll be a huge improvement. Maffeo Sutton washroom replacement. This has been ongoing for some time, and we're in the design phase right now, looking at different options for that. So it's going to be looked at for 2024 to 2026, and it's well on its way. There's some great design concepts for that washroom. It'll be a real good upgrade for it.
Councillor Eastmere.
Thank you. Through you, just a question about when we're designing these accessible washrooms. Is there an opportunity for the design to come to the accessibility committee for review and comment early enough in the design stage that those changes could be incorporated without causing too much of an issue?
Oh, definitely. We talked about that at the last AC, at the last meeting I was at, and certainly, I mean, those kinds of decisions or those kinds of conversations should include those folks that will be using those facilities. I think that's just proper, for sure.
Thank you.
As far as these ones, as far as the wash cars that went into the stadium, I believe they were set on basic standards for wash. I mean, there's only so much space in there, so they're based on those standards. But with the more creative ones like Maffeo Sutton, those kinds of conversations are valuable. Bevan Pool, Frank Crane re-roofing. Ms. Fuller mentioned this earlier. This is a large project, and it's one that definitely has to be done. So we're looking at replacing the overall structure, the entire roof and structure itself, but also in talking with the consultants, taking precautions so we have less of a maintenance or less of a replacement problem down the road, is to wrap our cables so that they're less affected by the elements. We have one cable that needs to be replaced because it's just been corroded to a point where it's not serviceable anymore. We'll do that as a side project, but it has to be done fairly soon. The NAC dehumidification, this is a big one as well. This is a large project. A lot of consulting has gone into this. It's very tricky to create an air quality space within an natatorium, within a pool. You have to achieve a certain amount of air exchanges per hour to make sure that you're bringing in the proper amount of fresh air, reducing the amount of humidity in the pool, still maintaining a comfortable climate, because the air quality affects the people that are swimming in the pool. As well, there's certain gases that come off the pool itself that cause chloramines, cause air quality issues. There's a whole bunch of very important factors that go into this. There's been a lot of consultation on this, and Ms. McCaskill and her team have done an excellent job in spearheading that and come up with some really good designs. So looking forward to seeing this done. It will go a long ways towards saving the asset itself as far as corrosion, what air quality does to metal and that type of thing, but also creating a space where patrons are very happy and comfortable in swimming, and just create a better overall experience for our patrons. Bevan Outdoor Learning Center. This is, oh, sorry, I'll let Ms. Osborne take this one.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. This one I'm particularly happy to see move along in the vision that we've had for several years, particularly as I've worked out of Bevan Park for many years and seen many children play on a concrete slab hard space. And this design concept is to take that concrete slab and turn it into a natural play and accessible area for children, adults, and youth. It has gone through a design phase where actually it's been to the accessibility, the Advisory Committee on Accessibility and Inclusiveness to review concept and get feedback. It will have the design completed in 2024 and will return to the committee for final review. This design will then move on to the Parks Department for project management. And we're particularly excited to add not only the outdoor play opportunities for the children, but also to make that space accessible as well for the users. And so we're looking forward to seeing that design completed, or that project completed in 2025. And that goes as a priority with our integrated action plan.
And Councillor Hemmons has a question, and then Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship. Forgive me, I should know this. Can you situate this in the park for me? Where will we see this on the landscape?
Yeah, so if you were towards the backside of the Bevan Park Social Centre facing Altrusa Park, it's the back end of the building, room 4 and 5, which is currently fenced off. It's a concrete slab with 4 cherry trees in it at the moment. And it's utilized by the Play and Learn preschool program, kinder prep program, after school care program. And we've seen multi-generations go through those programs and playing on the concrete slab. So we're looking forward to them having this opportunity. Mm-hmm.
That was my question, Your Worship.
So thank you.
Two birds with one stone. Well done.
Thank you.
Okay, back to me. Next one is on the Port Theatre improvements. Again, this is aging assets and life cycle issues that most of this takes in. Carpet replacement, painting of the exterior, boiler replacement, lighting is an issue there, reupholstering seats. We've seen some issues with the sound system recently, and we've addressed that. And I mean, it's one of those facilities. It's just like everyone else. As it ages, it needs to have parts of it replaced. It's 25 years old. Yeah. So some of our projects for 2025 to 2028, Bevan Pool HVAC number 4 replacement. That's one that's going to come up and we have to take care of. The NAC fitness equipment upgrade, $99,000 over 5 years. The play structure renewal at NAC. We replaced the boat with, we have a rock right now. We replaced that, so we're looking at replacing that and making that into more of a play area. Replacing and renewing our bulkheads that we have at NAC, and as well as the kin pool boilers. So that's down at our kin pool boilers getting to the end of life, and we need to look at replacing that. So that's what we're looking at. Further programs and studies more for the park side of things. Bleacher and bench replacement. Another one is the accessibility and inclusivity. That's for all parks and recreation culture, so $75,000 a year for that, and that will be based off of what our audits come up with as far as priorities as we go through facilities, and that's that money that's earmarked for that. Spray park repairs, $33,000 a year. We have trail wheel development and rehabilitation, that's $200,000 per year. And we have a park amenities condition assessment, that's $75,000 a year. Again, on annual programs, park amenities investigation pre-design, we have $50,000 a year set aside for that. Partners in parks is $100,000 a year. And our ongoing beach access upgrades is $25,000 a year. And the one study that is on here is for boulevard median resourcing review. Parks takes care of all the trees and grass and such on mediums and boulevards, so maintaining those and coming at how we work those better. They always take a beating with road salt and grime and stuff, so that's part of that study. And the last couple of slides here, I'm going to turn back over to Ms. Osborne.
Councillor Hemmons has a question.
Thank you, Your Worship. The bleacher and bench replacement item caught my eye and reminded me that we received funding for new bleachers at Kikinishtuk Stadium, but I don't see them in here. Are they on our work plan?
They are on the work. They should be on the work plan. They are. We have a construction manager involved with that process right now, so we are looking at putting those bleachers in. That's moved along quite well. We do have an early design stage or phase for that. So the construction manager as well as our senior project manager have been working together to come up with a finalized drawing that we can work with. And we are looking to put those in probably late fall if everything goes well.
Great fall, thank you.
Back to me. Our city plan references the need to continue to provide recreation facilities and infrastructure to meet the demands of the community as it grows and supports overall recreation wellness needs. Staff are continuing to support this integrated action plan priority by meeting with regular user groups and engaging with different of our local partners to determine what our infrastructure needs are for recreation services. We have staff working on the Nanaimo feasibility study for the Nanaimo Art Gallery and site selection plan, and many staff are gathering information and working with our user groups to determine what we specifically need in amenities and space at the South End Community Centre as we continue to move that project forward. And back to Mr. Bryson.
No, I think the next one is yours too.
Oh, sorry. We're also continuing our partnerships with local organizations such as the Japanese Canadian Legacy Society Infrastructure Grants and Heritage Site Plan. These are exciting projects that were just before you a few weeks ago to understand a little bit more about what those could look like. The first one being working with the Seven Potatoes to redesign one of the spaces at the Bevan Park Social Centre. And the second project is working with them on a heritage site within one of our local parks.
Further that, natural areas, expanding restoration work and review of natural assets and urban trees. That's an ongoing one for us. Growth both of the parks and trail systems and its amenities, and growth in the park user base. While operational budgets do grow, maintenance team capacity is not in step with growth. There's an opportunity to build parks operation maintenance crews to be able to proactively maintain parks assets and stop the break-fix cycle, which we seem to be in right now. Annual program funding for some of the annual programs has not increased over time, impacting project outcomes, parks and partners in parks, for example. So those are the last of the emergency. I apologize. The last one is yours.
Oh, yeah.
There we go. Sorry.
So now we actually wanted to turn the discussion over for council. Staff is looking if you have any feedback or direction to provide staff as we begin preparing the 2025 to 2029 project plan that we will be bringing back to you next fall for your consideration.
Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's actually a question, if I might. I'm just wondering when we will see the project for the South End Community Centre come back to the council table. I'm sorry, I didn't realize you'd gotten up and walked away. Sorry. I just wondered if we might have some, just as we discuss projects and timelines and so forth, I just wondered about when we would see some final site selection and about the South End Community Centre.
Through the chair, I apologize for the South End Community
Center. Yes.
And I apologize. I can't give you a definite answer on that. I do know that there's been a lot of discussions around the needs with stakeholders and with staff, and I'm not sure exactly what best to tell you on the.
Okay, so would it be 2024?
Well,
I'm trying to pin you down. Can you tell?
Yeah, no, and again, I wouldn't feel comfortable giving you a date that I'm not positive on. I wouldn't want to give you information that I'm not for sure.
I understand.
But I do know that there has been an awful lot of work on it, and some great discussions and great ideas and plans. So it's when it'll come forward as far as the next steps, I'd probably leave to Mr. Harding when he's back.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thanks. Just on that, I think the larger capital projects like the Operations Center, the South End Community Association, I think that, is probably something that we need to bundle together and have a larger discussion on just how we're going to go, find the money and go forward with public assent. So I'm sure that the timing on the South End will be tied in with that. But just with there's a couple slides that were shown. I think there's a 3rd Street and there's another one where the cycling infrastructure and pedestrian infrastructure was shown as an additional cost. I'm just curious, is that something that is part of the project, or is that something that needs to be approved additionally? I'm just curious sort of what was the intention behind separating out the cycling infrastructure from that road upgrade?
Thanks, Your Worship. That's a really good question, and appreciate it, because as you know, we try to build to the appropriate standard whenever possible, and this particular one, 3rd Street, has included the cycling infrastructure from Howard up to Pine Street, but over the hill, it's only funded as far as the underground infrastructure, simply because of pressures on costs, and the general capital fund was really the reason, and that was the same thing for the Hammond Bay sewer upgrade. Again, we would try and create the space for surface improvements while we're doing the underground. The underground is urgent to support growth, but the surface, again, we had to take some things out of the budget. The opportunity exists, I believe. This would be one where we would consider perhaps delaying, as I was talking about earlier, gapping the plan a little bit, which will enable some capacity, but also I don't want to overpromise on the gas works funding, because we don't have clarity on that yet. But this is an example of where we could maybe use the new gas tax funding to support.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, just from my perspective, and I know it's not council direction on it, but we do come across that bridge. I would like to see those included, and obviously understand that there are some resource constraints. My question is, say on these projects, and say if we are against resource constraints, we're doing the road upgrade, can we do the road allocation still for space, so that when the new roads put down, we are allocating the space for the cycle lanes and the walk, and that the road lanes are made at a certain width, and at the worst case scenario, we can put a painted bike lane down there. Is that possible?
In this particular case, it's probably possible. I think when you crest the hill and start to go down, it's relatively wide, but there's also parking, etc. So it would just be a matter of restriping the road in that case, if we're going to that bare minimum. But I think ideally we'd like to complete the cycle route.
Absolutely. So will this project, and say the other project on Hammond Bay, will that be coming back to council where we'll have a decision point on, okay, say the gas tax doesn't come in, and we could be on the hook for the whole cost of putting the additional active transportation? Will we get a chance to make that decision at the council table?
I think so, yes, Your Worship. That's the kind of thing that we would bring in front of you with when we're presenting the capital plan in the fall, and that would be maybe a decision slide, or depending again on the gas tax funding. If it's simply funded, or easily funded, I should say, then obviously it'd be ideal to include it. But if there's still that decision point that we're feeling the pinch, we'll bring it back.
Great, I really like to see that for sure. And the last question I had is, there's quite a substantial amount of road rehabilitation projects, and I think, sometimes the, building out the roads and the space reallocation can be quite expensive, but are we, whenever there's a road rehab and it is on an identified cycle route, are we by default doing the road size reallocation? And say if the money doesn't have for more substantial bike lanes than that, are we going ahead and just doing the painted lines?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
That's a classic example. If we're repaving a road, you threw me off there. I thought I misspoke or something, but yeah, that'd be a classic example of, you know, repaving a road. We would, as much as possible, bring the road up to our standard, using the funds that are available.
Okay. And then I guess, like, say for example, like roads like Wakasaya, that's one where, you know, have seen that project sort of be pushed out. I don't even think I saw it on this project plan, but that's one where people are cycling on it all the time. It looks like the width is there to just even put a painted line on it. For projects just like that, where all we really require is a painted line to sort of like allow for the, you know, space for the cycle to be seen. Is that something that we can request as council on some specific routes that we've identified in town and make that a specific project? Because I think there's just some areas where it's like all it would take would be a little bit of work on the painting, and it would make it, you know, a lot safer, and get people into practice that, yeah, this is where the car goes and this is where people can ride their e-bikes. And, you know, as there's more uptake on e-bikes, just even having that painted line is a huge step, and can, you know, allow for room where if there isn't resources to put more, you know, established things in place. So I was just curious, any comments on that?
Your Worship, I have a couple of comments on that. One of them is that it's the kind of thing that we can absolutely do, you know, as far as redoing the road, and that one's getting into be in rough shape. Again, the general capital fund is, you know, it's creating the delay in pushing that out, or the we can do those interim fixes similar to what we've done with the rotten storm sewer south of the Cat Stream there. The flip side is, the other part of where we're putting our attention on active transportation routes are on those corridors, those primary and secondary corridors that we have in the official community plan. So Wakasaya is not one of them, right? So we have the main focus through Bowen Park, and then to Comox Road, and similarly from the Parkway around 3rd Street. So we've got the two other routes to drive people either to VIU or towards downtown, and so they can come in the back way, so to speak, on the active transportation. So Wakasaya itself is not as high a priority in completing the network. Mm-hmm. Not to say it can't be done. It's that we're trying to focus where those networks.
Great. And maybe I think that's the question, is like, okay, so I understand, like, you know, the focus of what we have on paper on that is like, as somebody who's riding a bike all the time, and like everybody, you're coming down Bowen Road and you got to get across, you know, that area. It's either Wakasaya or Pine, and a lot of people go on Wakasaya, and maybe we need to look at that redesignation, but that's something that, if we feel important, council can bring forward. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Conscious of the time, we've got 45 minutes left to deal with a fairly lengthy agenda yet. Mr. Sims, Ms. Fuller, thank you very much on this section, much appreciated. The next item on the agenda is hosting the AVICC conference. Ms. Robertson, please.
Thank you, Worship. The Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities Executive have once again reached out to Council seeking approval to, or consideration of hosting the annual conference in 2025. They have found most recently that given the number of delegates that sign up each year, and they do host it annually in April, that Victoria and Nanaimo are the only... Oops.
I'm sorry, you didn't see my question before the end of that previous section. My feedback was that I think we could take the funds that we're spending on the e-mobility strategy and the staff time that's going into that, and put that into what we know we need, which is the end of trip facilities. That would really be my preference.
Thank you very much.
So I'm not sure if that would require a motion. I'm not saying I'm going to do it, I'm just asking the process.
Your Worship, maybe I'll jump in while I think staff are having a discussion, but I think part of what we want to do today is very much introduce to council early on in our budget process. A good reminder of, you know, water staff working on what's the community going to see this year, what do we have plans for the next 5 years, but also at the same time leave space for council based on your based on the IAP, the Integrated Action Plan, what is it the council wants to move or accelerate. So this is your budget, this is your capital plan. If there are things that you'd rather see us not focus on based on the IEP, and there's other priorities council would like to move up, by all means, we'd like to hear that now, so that when we bring the plan back to you in the fall, we can incorporate those recommendations from council. So if there are specific recommendations regarding any of those initiatives, we'd be more than happy to take motions from council at this time.
I've got a question related to...
Just before we go to the question, I suspect what staff are looking at, sometimes it's a matter of where the funding is coming from also, and whether one project is funded from one source that can actually be moved over and transferred to another source. So I suspect that's what our finance team's looking at right now. So we'll get back to you on the specific question about whether cancellation of one project frees up resources for another project or not. But absolutely, in terms of making sure that we prioritize whether it's Wakesaya or another initiative that council wants to move forward in your IAP, we want to hear about that.
Ms. Fuller.
Through the chair to Councillor Eames-Smear, so there would be two challenges with that. One, the funding source would not be applicable to move it, and two, we have already gone to tender. So we have put out a tender, we have responses to that tender, so it'd be a bit of a challenge there to now go to the market and say that we're not proceeding with the project.
Councillor Gesselbrock?
That was my question, whereabouts sort of it was in the tendering process, and it's coming out of the sustainability climate reserve, that funding?
Through the chair to Councillor Gesselbrock, yes, it's funded from the Climate Action Initiatives Reserve.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Eastmere?
I just further to what Councillor Gesselbrock brought up around Wakesaya being a really important corridor, I concur, and you know, when you turn onto Wakesaya from Bowen Road, there's like 100 meters of a painted bike lane, and then it just ends right before you get into all of the areas where, you know, you have kids traveling to school, and I think that's a very used and important corridor, so I would be in support of something so that we move that up in the timeline.
I think it's fair to say that staff have heard the concerns that have been raised by the two of you, but this is with respect not the morning to try and nail this down, but certainly we can get a report back, I'm sure, in the near future. Thank you very much. Back to Ms. Robertson, please.
Thanks. Just again, the AVICC executive has reached out to council to see if you would consider hosting the conference again in 2025. We have done it in the past in 2007, 16, and 2020. Right now they've discovered that with the number of delegates, which have increased over time, that really the City of Victoria and the City of Nanaimo are the two places that can provide enough accommodation. So there's typically around 300 or so delegates, and with their spouses that come, there's a lot of significant dollars that come into Nanaimo for these conferences. So they're not only looking to see if council will consider hosting it for 2025, but also going forward every second year. As noted in the recommendation, that we would be looking to extend the invitation to co-host with the RDN. Last time that it was a cost-sharing initiative, and I believe it was put forward to the board on March 10th. And so, yeah, the recommendation is just to look at accepting the invitation to host the conference at the Conference Center in 2025, approving adding a project to 2025 for $48,000 for hosting the event, which we would then bill back the RDN for the 50%. Extend an invite to the RDN to consider hosting it moving forward, and also to cost share 50% of the cost to the Regional District of Nanaimo.
Thank you very much. Before I go to Councillors Perino and Gesselbrock, I can advise that Chair Craig has texted me this morning and mentioned that it slipped off the table as far as the RDN was concerned, and will be on next week's agenda for all of us, so we'll have an opportunity then. I might add, just out of interest, which isn't mentioned, the cost of getting all of us to Victoria will disappear, and those monies will be available, if you will, notionally to actually help host the conference here. So it's a bit of a win-win in some respects. Councillor Perino and then Councillor Gesselbrock.
Your worship, I'd like to put the motion on the floor. If I get a seconder, I'd like to speak to it, please.
Please, and seconded Councillor Hemmons.
Very, very quickly, this is something that will bring more than $500,000 of profit to our community. This is an important event, a lot of people, and I just hope they spend like crazy all over town and just keep them busy. So I hope this gets passed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gesselbrock.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, just I know at the AVICC, I think until there's another city that can host the size of conference, that it'll be alternating every single year between Victoria and Nanaimo. So this will be a 1 every 2 year request.
It's likely the way it's going to go. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion, any opposed, none, motion carries. Thank you very much, and thank you to Donna Stennis for preparing the report. On to the 580 Fitzwilliam renovation project. Mr. Groot, good morning. Nice to see you.
Good morning, Your Worship. Good morning, Council. For the sake of brevity, I will just add a small little bit of information in regard to the funding request. So the renovation project at 580 Fitzwilliam is nearing completion. But like most renovation projects, there is, always a challenge, and you come across things that you don't expect. And then there are additional intricacies with making it a RCMP usable facility. So as such, the recommendation is that the Finance and Audit Committee recommend that Council direct staff to increase the budget, 2024 budget, by $150,000. And then that is funded by the RCMP contract reserve, which has zero impact on taxation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moved Councillor Hemmons, seconded Councillor Perino. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. That was quick, Mr. Groot. Thank you. The next is the 2023 budget carry forwards. Ms. Mercer.
Thank you. So each year a review is done of all the projects, operating and capital, to determine what needs to be carry forwarded to the following year. So Ms. Fulla is here just to give a brief description of the report and answer any questions you might have.
Good morning. For your information, we have the 2023 budget carry forward report. At the end of the year, not all projects are completed or have been fully invoiced. For projects in progress, substantially completed or delayed but anticipated to be undertaken in the upcoming year, budgets are carried forward. At the end of 2023, $94 million in project budgets were carried forward to 2024, as well as $1.2 million in operating budgets. The reasons for projects being carried forward can vary year to year and include capacity constraints, both internal and external, cash flow timing, and work plan changes. The information report provides a breakdown of the most significant carry forwards, and the appendix provides a detailed breakdown of the carry forwards by department. The carry forwards will be reflected in the 2024 to 2028 final financial plan that we'll be bringing back to you next month.
Any questions for Ms. Fulla? Not seeing any. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Sorry, Councillor Gesselbrock.
Just on the carry forward, there was one that was delayed that I just was curious what it was, and I had it written down, and it has what I wrote down has disappeared. So I'm just pulling up the line item here. And I guess just the first question is, in terms of our carry forward, and I don't know if this was going back to what you were saying, Mr. Sims, where we might have to, we've got to kind of like put a pause on things, but is this the normal amount of carry forwards that we've seen, or is it higher, like substantially higher than normally?
Through the chair to Councillor Gesselbrock, we have seen an increase over the last few years in dollar-wise carry forwards. So this year we're at $94 million for projects. Last year we were at $85.5 million in carry forwards, and the year before that we had $57.2 million in carry forwards. So we have seen a bit of an increase. Part of that would be, of course, related to construction costs have increased, so you do need to factor that in, but even above that, there is still an increase in what we are carrying forward.
Okay, thank you. It's gonna take me time. There's another question. I have to look up the line item that I was interested in.
Perhaps you can try and locate it and we can come back to it later if it's not popping up
Oh,
quick.
there's nobody else with questions? Oh, okay, yeah. Come back to it.
Thank you. If no further questions on this section, we'll let Councillor Gesselbrock ask his question later when he finds the item.
I found it.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry. It's under corporate services. It says corporate and business development, and it was like total carry forward was 8 million, and delayed not started was 4.9 million. I was just curious what if that was one project or several. I just didn't know what would be under that one.
Through the chair to Councillor Gasabrecht, that's related to a land purchase.
Sorry,
Land purchase.
Gotcha.
Property purchase?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We won't go any further down that hole. The next is much appreciated, the next is the 2024 property tax and penalty due dates. Over to Ms. Slater. Ms. Slater, good morning, welcome.
Oh, good morning, thank you. Good morning, Your Worship and Council. I will be speedy. So I'm going to introduce the report on setting the property tax due dates and the related penalty dates. So every year, the property tax due date is July 2nd, which is the first business day in July every year. And that, of course, is legislated through the community charter. So staff recommendation, of course, is to go ahead and continue on with the July 2nd due date. But the penalty dates are where we have a little more flexibility as a municipality. So by legislation, under the municipal tax regulation, we do have to charge at least 10% in penalties on unpaid taxes, and our discretion comes in the split of those penalties. So for the last couple of years, we've had a 2% penalty charge after the property tax due date, so July 2nd, and then we charge 8% on the last business day of August, which is generally August 31st. So that's been our consistent pattern for the last few years. Prior to COVID, we used to do a 5% and 5% split. But we found during COVID, in order to give people a little bit more flexibility with payment, we had switched it to the 2% and 8% structure, and that's working very well. So the staff proposal in the report is actually to keep the 2% and 8% split going on a go-forward basis. And the number one reason for that is that it actually does provide the City of Nanaimo residents with a lot more grace. Every year, there's a lot of people that do forget to claim their homeowner grants, and it can cause a lot of anxiety for people. And having a smaller penalty on those misclaimed homeowner grants is beneficial. And also, there are a lot of people that unfortunately aren't able to pay the full amount of their property taxes by that July 2nd due date. So there's a little bit more flexibility and grace given if the second part of the penalty, the 8%, is given a little bit later in August. We've looked at our operations as well, the 8% and 2%, the timing with how we have to notify people of tax sale. Operationally, it's working very well in terms of dates. And so in terms of staff recommendations, that's the format that we are looking at potentially going with over the next future years.
Thank you. If it ain't bust, don't fix it. Someone care to make the recommended motion? Moved Councillor Perino, seconded Councillor Eastmere. Councillor Perino.
Just very quickly, Your Worship, just to say, keeping it as we've had it last year, the last 2 years, I think is an important. Public is now used to it, and as you said, it gives a little bit more leniency to those folks that are struggling to get their payments made on time. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Slater. The next is capacity funding for housing initiatives. Mr. Holm, please.
Good morning. Thank you, Your Worship, and committee members. So this is money that's been provided to assist local governments in implementing the recent provincial housing legislation. In this case, the City of Nanaimo received $619,936. Staff have looked into, and Ms. Brinkman provided an update in January with respect to the impacts of the legislation on work plans over 2024-2025. We've identified five projects that need additional funding. They're outlined in the report. There's an additional scope required to the development cost charge review that's underway. There's an amenity cost charge program that needs to be developed. We need to update our housing needs report. We're waiting for guidance from the province on a couple of those items still. We need to update, in 2025, we need to update city plan and our zoning bylaw to address the housing needs report requirements identified there. We need to, and we're currently and will be continuing to model servicing implications of the legislative changes. So there's money needed there. Mr. Sims' staff are helping with that and have consultants involved in that. So this money must be spent by the end of 2025. As I mentioned, there's the 5 program areas that we've identified that we're going to have to do work in to support the implementation of the provincial legislation. At this point, we've done best guess on range of potential costs. We're going to be going out to market soon on consulting services on some of it, particularly the housing needs report. Again, waiting provincial guidance on that before we know exactly what the consultant will be doing. Yeah, best guess estimates at this point. We plan to come back in the fall with an update on and refinement on where there's likely to be overages in some areas, and we might be able to move the money elsewhere. So there's some flexibility in what we do with it. This is just to outline for the committee and council what the intention is with the money, and then we'll update in the fall. Happy to take any questions, and Ms. Brinkman's here as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Himmons.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, staff. This legislation is creating a lot of good work for consultants. Does this cover the cost of our staff time? Sorry. Okay, so we're going to have consultants come in and help us figure out this new legislation and how it fits with our plans, et cetera, et cetera. Does the funding offered by the province meet or match what we are going to put out in order to implement this legislation? Is it completely contained within that consultant funding, or if you can give me any sort of, I'm trying to get a sense of how much staff time is being pulled into this new legislation.
That's a great question through the chair to Councillor Hemmons. That would be difficult to answer. There's a considerable amount of staff time. I could take a guess percentage-wise, a wild guess. It depends on the project and the staff involved and the time. Obviously, there's a critical time period leading up to June 30th that there's a lot of work underway. You're going to be seeing some of that at Governance and Priorities next week. So there's a June 30th deadline for this year. There's a lot of work going on leading up to that. There will be more work in the fall, and then going into next year. It'll involve staff in engineering, transportation, all across the city, parks, recreation, and culture. Everywhere. So sorry, but I can't really answer that. But this money does not offset the staff costs of implementing the legislative changes.
Thank you. And further, are there, I think I know the answer, are there any economies of scale that we can realize by working with other municipalities with similar populations and similar challenges around housing to implement this legislation?
Yeah, through the chair, there are opportunities even through the PIBC, the planning and province is supporting some of that work. There's collaborative networks. And we're coordinating with peers in other municipalities, at the regional district as well. But there is a contextual piece to every situation. So we can learn from others for sure, but we have to apply the changes within the context that we operate within. So definitely some benefit to as peer learning, and there's a lot of that in local government, and we benefit from that. And there is guidance being offered by the province as well, and they're learning and responding and helping us. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, Councillor Perino, seconded Councillor Hemmons. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. And the next item is the 2024 Local Government Development Approvals Program. Mr. Holm, thank you, Ms. Brinkman, for your performance here this morning.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is an opportunity that was identified for a grant of up to $150,000. It's through it's the second round of grant being made available through the Local Government Development Approvals Program. The report touches on sort of the background of that program and what it's intended to do. Staff have put together a proposal, made application ahead of a March 8th deadline. Under the heading, the program heading that we have is Development Approvals, Business Analysis and Process Improvements. What we're looking at is, and this is actually good timing on this, to support and accelerate a granular review of development approval processes. So really down at the fine-grained level of the business processes and looking at recommended changes in those and managing those changes and the impacts of those changes on ensuring that the impacts of those changes are limited in our daily business of development approvals. A lot of this work would be actually, so what we're looking at is recommending a consultant to do the business analysis and change management to support work that's already going on. That would accelerate the work that's happening, we estimate, by about 20%. A lot of this work would be done, it's supporting Mr. Ng's staff, Carrie Ng's staff, who are doing a lot of the heavy lifting on the project management and business analysis side, and would also involve staff in planning and development as well, in going through the business analysis and implementing those recommended changes. So looking for council, as part of the grant application, we need acceptance of the application, support for council for staff to provide overall grant management as well. So happy to take questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Moved Councillor Prino, seconded Councillor Hemmens. Not seeing any questions or discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Much appreciated. The next is Parks and Open Spaces Fees and Charges Amendments. Ms. Osborne, welcome back. And Ms. Gonzalez, nothing cheers the public up so much as increased fees.
Okay. Okay. As you are aware, the Parks, Recreation and Culture adjusted the fees and charges, and they were adopted in June of 2023. Over the last year, staff have been working with our different user groups to help them work through the process of the new fee structure. After being in place for several months, there were some unintended barriers that were identified for regular non-commercial parks and open spaces users, and smaller not-for-profit based events were disproportionately impacted by the fee adjustments. Staff have consulted with the park users to better understand their concerns and what their considerations are that we could utilize to reduce some of those barriers. What we knew going into it, but became even clearer through the process, was that every particular event and booking in a park is very unique to its purpose. Its needs are very different in how it serves our community. Following the process, staff have been able to make some recommendations on what we feel we could do to reduce some of those barriers and make our fees and charges more equitable for parks and open spaces. We made two significant changes. The first recommendation is to replace fees, that the replacement fees be based on a two-tier system that considers the impact that the booking has on the park and the park users. And the other, we have a high impact and a low impact rating. The high impact would take the commercial rate, and it would remain fairly close to that, with the current rate going lower for the low impact commercial rate. All fees would remain conditional on the commercial rate, which is the base that we started with, and the discounts are applied to the user group classification. Staff have also recommended adjustments in the percentage discounts applied to the not-for-profit park users, with the following suggestion: that commercial bookings would remain full of charge and be consistent with all of our fees and charges that we apply. that private groups approximately receiving 10% off, which would be consistent with our other parks, recreation, and culture fees and charges, and that the not-for-profit 2 adult group would receive a 50% discount, and this is a new discount rate that for only parks and open spaces. It was a 20% discount, and that the not-for-profit 1 would receive a 75% discount, which is also new for parks and open spaces, as it was a 50% discount. Finally, we are also here today to recommend that some additional housekeeping adjustments to the bylaw, such as the addition of the Harewood turf fields, be added to the parks bylaw process. Ms. Gonzalez and I are here today to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. And before I take questions, I just want to say thank you very much to staff. There's nothing more problematic than trying to face the challenges, because I think Council well appreciates that all of you in Parks and Rec work very closely with the users, whether they be individuals or groups, and it is challenging work, and frankly it is work on which Council relies on the intelligence and compassion and common sense of staff, so much appreciate the recommendations. In order, Councillors Perino and Eastmere.
Thank you, Your Worship, and actually to echo what you said, I am so pleased to see this, because when I realized, we're trying to make the fees in line with, just inflation, but to see some of the groups that were so badly affected. So I really appreciate seeing this. And I just, the one question that I had is, we had a particular group, it was a children's group that was affected. Do you remember that one? I can't remember exactly what the details were, but so they would be, yeah, these changes would affect what they were facing. Okay.
Absolutely.
That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you so much. Thank you, because especially children's groups, it's important. Thank you for the work on this.
Are you moving the
I'd love to move this, yes, thank you.
And seconded, Councillor Hemmons. Councillor Eastmere, please.
Thank you. Through you, just a question about determining the high versus low impact bookings. Do they have to meet all of the qualifications on either side?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Eastmere, it would be a majority.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, love to see this. Thank you so much for bringing back this more versatile option. It's really appreciated.
Thank you.
Not seeing any further questions. Motion's been made. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. The next is H, other grant request from Nanaimo Science and Sustainability Society. Ms. Mercer, over to Ms. Slater. Thank you very much. Ms. Slater, please, again.
I'm back. Good morning. So I'm the second last agenda item today. We have received another grant application for an in-kind facility rental from the Nanaimo Science and Sustainability Society, which I always have a hard time articulating out loud. They are requesting up to 105 hours for the use of outdoor city park spaces. And so this society provides a free program, and it's called Science in the Park, and it's free of charge to Nanaimo residents. And the program allows children and their parents or caretakers to explore beaches, parks, and other green spaces with the Nanaimo Science outreach educators, and again is free of charge. And although the Nanaimo Science and Sustainability Society does offer programming where fees are charged, this particular grant application only relates to the free program. So it's only Science in the Park. If I were to write the motion, the council motion again, I would have wanted to specifically articulate that it's just for the Science in the Park program. So I thought that I would just outline that here today. And as outlined in the previous report that you just heard about, there maybe has been some issues or recommendations for changes to the park's open space rental fees. And so that's why the motion is written the way it is. It's for the approval of up to 105 hours at whatever the rate structure would currently be enacted at. So we would be looking at the $900 financial impact now.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gesselbrock?
I was just going to move the recommendation.
Excellent. Seconded, Councillor Perino. Don't think there's much discussion on supporting young people in science in our community. All those in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Eastmere. You wanted to say something?
Actually, no, I think Nanaimo Science has been an amazing organization. I just want to recognize the work that Elaine Parker has done, because she's actually moving on from her executive director role with Nanaimo Science. But Elaine Parker, who is the current executive director of Nanaimo Science, has done amazing work. She's moving on from that role, but I think this is a really good move for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hemmons has something to add?
Yeah, thank you. A question, do we have other nonprofit groups using the other grant stream to pay for park rentals?
Through the chair to you, Councillor Hemmons, we haven't received any other grant applications due for the outside park space rentals. We do occasionally get other grant applications for in-kind rentals for things like the Volunteer Nanaimo banquet. I think we awarded another in-kind facility rental for that.
Okay.
But I haven't, like the doors aren't blowing down with applications for in-kind facility rentals.
Okay, great. I fully support. I'm just
right.
I'm curious if you know, if other groups access this, how quickly that $7,000 would be reduced if other, you know, nonprofit groups understood that they could do this.
There definitely could be potential for that, and definitely $7,000 wouldn't probably take us very far.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. The next is the 2024 Cultural Grant Funding Reallocation Recommendation. Ms. Mercer?
Sorry, I am.
Ms.
Sorry.
Osborne?
Yeah, I'm going
Ms.
to pass it
Fuller?
over to Ms. Osborne. Sorry, I didn't realize that this one had my name on it.
Ms. Osborne, please.
Good morning. I think this is the last you'll see of me today. I'm here today to recommend that Council the approval of the reallocation of some declined funding from the Culture and Events Project Grant. There were some funds returned as some of the organizations that put forward their application were unable to follow through on their commitment. So in the process, the Finance and Audit Committee we're asking that Finance and Audit Committee recommend that Council approve the reallocation of the 2024 Culture and Event Project Grant funds as follows to the Canadian Society ABA Artist Collective Theatre, ACT Theatre, a recommendation of $600,000.
6,000.
Oh, sorry. That's why I'm in Parks and Recreation on finance.
I was going to say if it's 600,000, we'll pass it.
That's our full grant.
10 minutes. Seconded, Councillor Hemmons. All those in.
I have a question.
Sorry. Yes.
I just want to confirm that the ACT Theatre was on the standby list.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. Down to the last item, which is the 2024 Cultural Grant Funding Reallocation Recommendation for Mr. Holm. And that's the rationale, pardon me, yes, it's the rationale for why the City of Nanaimo, yeah, it's not in the correct title in my notes. Rationale for why the city was not selected to receive the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation Housing Accelerator funding.
Right, thank you.
Give us the bad news.
Right, thank you. So in August of 2023, the city applied to CMHC's Housing Accelerator Fund opportunity. It was confirmed February 29th, 2024 that we were not successful in that application. Staff followed up with CMHC representatives to get some insight into why we weren't successful. I'll give you, the report speaks a bit to that, and Ms. Brinkman's here. She had direct contact with CMHC reps as well throughout the process. In putting the grant together, there's quite a bit of work involved in that with staff from a number of areas, identifying projects that could be funded by the grant application and would meet the criteria of the grant application. What we did put forward in regard to the application was we requested $15.15 million from the Housing Accelerator Fund. That was it was based on a formula that was developed through the number of additional units that you expected to have built in the community over the program period, which was 2024 to 2026, based on the initiatives that the community was undertaking to meet the program objectives. The 15.15 million that we had requested from the program, we had targeted, suggested targeting to sanitary sewer upgrades, some significant sanitary sewer upgrades, and as well as property acquisition to support affordable housing initiatives. Those were the primary intended investments that we would have made with the program had we been successful. So what we learned from speaking with CMHC reps was that Nanaimo's application scored very well, met the program criteria well. We learned that the $4 billion program had a subscription applications totaling $8.7 billion. So obviously there's huge demand, more than the program could handle. Not surprised to hear that. We also heard that there were 179 successful applicants out of 544 applicants. So definitely a big interest in the program. Not surprisingly, there was a big need for the types of projects that we put forward to fund in many communities across the country. Speaking of which, BC was, so there was a proportional overrepresentation in British Columbia as well. So they have to look at sort of national distribution as well. And BC had, they mentioned a very strong showing of highly qualified applications. So we're competing in that pool regionally, which also doesn't help our success rate there. So overall, yeah, we did. We put forward. We were guided by CMHC staff. Worked very closely with them in putting the application together. They identified that the application scored well, met the program criteria, and we were not successful. I don't really have any insight beyond that. Ms. Brinkman may have more to add. You know, it's unfortunate. It would have funded some definitely well-needed infrastructure upgrades projects that you know, we're going to have to rely on other funding sources, and as well as property acquisition to support affordable housing, which obviously Council Committee is well aware that that's an ongoing need in the community. I guess just in one other comment, program reps that we spoke with did hear loud and clear that many communities are in desperate need of support to fund infrastructure projects as one of the primary areas that the communities need assistance with to support all the growth that's going on. So that doesn't come as a surprise to you, I'm sure, but if you have any questions, we're happy to take those. Thanks.
Thank you. Sometimes you just have to settle for the participation ribbon. Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not feeling quite as kind about it. I feel like we removed the barriers. We have accelerated our growth for the housing supply. We've supported the development of, you know, a complete low carbon and climate resilient community, and we're being penalized by not getting this. And it's as though we've done everything we were supposed to do. We've met all of our goals. We've met the province's goals, and we're being penalized by not getting this. And so to do the infrastructure projects that we need to do to help our housing supply, I'm really, really disappointed with the government with this one. Really disappointed. Just my point of view.
Thank you. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, similar. I'm not sure that we're being penalized. I mean, I think, you know, there's 1,000,001 applications for a limited amount of resources. I am curious, though, I'm curious about geographic distribution across the country, if we have any data on that. I'm further interested in all of our projects are ones that we're going to have to do anyway. So we're saying, you know, for this accelerated funding, we're going to hopefully, you know, take that money and apply it to things that we're already doing. The communities that receive the funding were successful applicants. Did they have innovation? Were they, I'd be curious to know what their applications look like in relation to ours. I understand we've been told it was a strong application, it met all the criteria, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know if you can even answer that, but that's just a curiosity I have. And the last piece I have is probably a question for the mayor, and I'd be curious where our MP was in this. I mean, she's our connection to federal initiatives, and was she briefed, and did she advocate for us, and et cetera, et cetera. Thank you.
Maybe if I could, through through the chair, just briefly respond. We had the same questions of the CMHC reps with respect to the other applicants, and you can read. They couldn't really respond to that. They couldn't really outline. They referenced their top 10 criteria that they had identified on the website, which they said we met. As far as the other applicants' submissions, they can't really shed any insight on that. If you look at the media releases and some of the reporting on it, they're depending on the community, but there's some of them are obviously quite innovative. Some of them seems like things that have happened here or we've implemented long ago. Obviously, the growth is happening here. We're doing the work. The stats, the demographics demonstrate that. I know Ms. Brinkman did have a chance at UBCM, and maybe she'll touch on something to hear a little bit from the minister on feedback that they received regarding the program. There was a bit of discussion there on that, so maybe Ms. Brinkman can add to that a little bit.
Ms. Brinkman, please.
So in mid-February, I had the fortune of going to the UBCM event. I think it was one day, and it was hosted by UBCM about the provincial housing initiatives and the new bills, Bill 44 and 46 and 47. So there was quite a few representatives from the different municipalities there in Vancouver, and they had invited the federal housing minister to speak as well. So. And at that event, what he heard from the different municipality representatives that spoke was it was unfortunate to pit municipalities against each other for this funding. So it was an unfortunate approach for necessary infrastructure that all municipalities across Canada need. And what the federal minister of housing said was what he heard and learned through the process is that there needs to be a more equitable approach for infrastructure for municipalities, not pitting municipalities against each other, and also not such a rigorous application process for it. I mean, a huge amount of time, staff time, was spent across Canada on doing this when really we could have been focusing on other housing initiatives that are necessary. So he heard that, and that was reflected back. So hopefully, and what actually the CMHC representative said is maybe stay tuned for the federal budget announcements coming up, and maybe we'll see something for infrastructure for Canadian municipalities in that announcement, something to look for.
With respect to our Member of Parliament, I can't honestly recall if she was requested to provide a letter of support. I know she's always provided letters of support when called upon. Mr. Lindsay, can you help me here?
I don't recall the letter of support, Your Worship, but I do know that since I've been in this position, we've had 2 meetings with her office, and at both those times we raised this specific file with her. We were in the process of drafting a briefing note for her to take back to Ottawa. I think in the same week we finally got a response that we didn't qualify. So it was definitely part of the conversation with her office over the last few months. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I also feel for something that is this is a lot of money up for grabs, money that we desperately need. I want something more than a letter of support. I want real advocacy and lobbying. I'd also be curious, you probably can't answer this, but criteria in terms of growth. So if, those municipalities or regions that are growing quickly like we are, how much of a factor is that in the allocation of these resources? I don't know if that's an unfair question, but it seems like that is, if we're talking about equitable distribution, that would be a really powerful way to demonstrate that.
Yeah, and if I could, through the chair, and Ms. Brinkman can correct me if I'm wrong, but the criteria did consider growth, but I think as one of the qualifiers, but I think the threshold was quite low as far as the growth that you had to demonstrate that you were achieving. But the idea behind the grant was that the grant would help provide additional units. So if you're already doing a lot of work, a few more units that the grant might provide, you're already doing so much in, towards building housing. It was a little bit, so we quite a high growth rate. We met obviously the minimum threshold. I don't know how you know, how the fact that we are much higher than the minimum threshold factored into the decision at the end of the day. I know there are other communities growing very quickly that did receive grant approval, and I know others that aren't growing as quickly that received grant approval, but they obviously met the minimum threshold. So
it's frustrating because what I interpret from that is that we're already doing the work, and so we're kind of getting passed over. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Eastmere.
Thank you. Through you, I think what I would also be interested to know from other successful applications is whether, because a big part of our application focused on sanitary sewer capacity upgrades, like with the butter tubs and the Hammond Bay area, and I just wonder if it speaks to like a disconnect between the idea of like what it takes to build housing and then what it takes to service it, because like had our application been fully focused on like buying land for affordable housing, like I just have to wonder if that would have appealed differently, but these are really the considerations that we have to deal with when servicing the new housing. So like I understand why those projects were in there because they're a really important like infrastructure aspect, but I just wonder if there were other successful applicants who did have that sort of like underground infrastructure as part of their application.
Maybe in response to the chair is, you know, we really did through the application process make a case for those projects in that they're in our urban centers, as allocated in our fairly newly adopted city plan, and really tried to make the case that those projects are necessary to allow for the housing to be built, because without the one, you can't have the other. So that was, we really tried to make that case in the application.
Mr. Holm.
yeah, and maybe thanks through the chair. I'll just add to that. I mean, it highlights the fact that the program was designed around how many more housing units are going to be permitted, built. Well, we put as you've just touched on, we put the foundation in place and the processes and the amenities and many of the great things to support people to come to the community and people to build the housing. And largely, municipalities don't build the housing. We rely on others, and there's other factors, obviously, that play into whether or not that housing actually gets built. But we put the systems and the amenities in place to support that. And I think we're doing a good job there, obviously. There's a lot being done, a lot of good work. Yeah, there's a disconnect there between what the program was based on and what we actually do. So,
Mr. Sims, noting the hour.
I'm conscious of the hour, but I just also wanted to put a plug in for FCM, who's really been banging this drum about the housing problem is an infrastructure problem. So I would hope that the federal government's well aware of that. It's been a good campaign.
Thank you very much. We have no other business, and I'm assuming no questions. A motion for adjournment. Moved Councillor Perino, seconded Councillor Kesselbrock. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you to staff this morning for the attendance and the work. Much appreciated.